Joel, welcome everybody to our first meeting of June 2023. We're here in the council chambers, of course, and there's also our Zoom component for those who would prefer to be at home relaxing while they watch the meeting. So just a quick scan. Looks like all council members are here with the exception of Councilmember Cargill. He will be here for the 7 o'clock. So we'll go ahead and jump in. Tonight we have the pleasure of graduating. I forgot how many total do we have? 18?
So tonight, I believe we have 16 in the ceremony.
Okay, we have 16 members of our community who will be given their certificate for completing the city's first Citizen City Academy. So we're real excited about it. I understand we've got some great feedback from it and some other things that we can look at for the future. So if things go well, we're looking at putting together another one in the fall. So I know that every single one of the graduates is going to tell 2 friends so they can tell 2 friends and so on and so on. So we can get some great participation, and hopefully at some point we'll get so much interest we can put it online for people to attend. So we're going to go ahead and start our graduation. Mark can give a little bit more of a intro as to maybe a summary of the topics we went through, and then we'll do the certificates.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor. And so as you mentioned, we're here tonight to recognize the folks that went through the City Academy, our inaugural academy, and you see a number of them out in the audience, and we'll have a chance to meet them individually as we recognize them. But I wanted to give council a bit of a backstory just to make sure that as the graduates are recognized, you kind of know the full story of what we did and how we approach this. And so, as you all know, we've been looking for ways for a while to enrich community engagement throughout the city, right? And so that is both with residences and businesses, and the goal is to make that the engagement proactive, meaningful, and transparent. And so what we want to do in the long run is we expect for that engagement to produce trust between the people and government, and then ultimately lead to better outcomes for everybody who lives here, works here, shops here, studies here, visits here. And so that's the goal. And so one of the key pieces of that strategy that we've talked about is the City Academy. And so last October, our staff, in partnership with the Community Engagement Commission, began kind of tinkering with this idea and putting a concept together, an outline to host information sessions and discussions about the local government, what it does, that kind of thing. And so eventually that outline was refined into what we delivered as the City Academy. And so we fast forward now to April 13th, we launched. That was our first session. We capped the registrations at 20. We got a full 20 registrations, and so we had a full house. And so we launched the Academy with a group of curious, civic-minded individuals, and the goal that we had going into it was helping them to gain a better understanding of how the city delivers services, makes decisions, divvies up resources, that kind of thing. And over the long term, we also hope to inspire the next generation of board commission members and elected officials. So those are ambitious goals. And so between April 13th and June 1st, over 8 sessions, 8 Thursdays, we covered multiple topics, and we had assistance from some of our closest local partners. And I'll mention some of them as I go through and thank them for their participation. We started out with a discussion on the form of government that was facilitated by myself and Mayor Kaminskis. We moved on to sources of revenue with our finance director, Kyle Dixon, strategic plan and budgeting, myself and Kyle Dixon, land use and zoning, which was facilitated by Lisa Key and Amy Mueller-Lyle in our planning and engineering department. Moved on to fire, EMS, and 911. And this is when I think people started to really get excited about this. Chief Frank Soto delivered that, and he's represented tonight by Deputy Chief Zach Bond from the Spokane Valley Fire Department. And then Lori Markham and her team from the Spokane Regional Emergency Communications Group. They came back, Shrek came back for the next session and partnered with law enforcement, with Chief Simmons and Lieutenant Morgan, because they have inner workings with both the fire service and the police. And so they talked about the differences and the similarities in their working with both of those entities. Moved on to utilities. Avista presented Colton Duckin, the regional manager there with a team, and then Jay Adams from the Liberty Lake Sewer and Water District. And then we wrapped up last week with a session from Streets and Parks that Jen Camp, our Director of Operations and Maintenance, facilitated and ably partnered with Tammy Yeager and Tammy Haggerty from WM, who talked about solid waste. And so all in all, we went through 8 sessions, very well attended, engaged, great questions throughout. We got a lot of good feedback that we hope to use to shape the next academy. We'll talk about when that may be in the future. But tonight we want to focus on recognizing the graduates. And so these individuals represent the inaugural graduating class of the Liberty Lake City Academy. And so before we start calling them up, and I'll explain in just a minute what we want you to do so that you don't have to wonder about that. I want to give the mayor and council an opportunity to make any comments that you may want to make. And so I'll open the floor to that, Mayor.
Go ahead, council. You have any? Councilmember Dunn?
Yeah, I just want to say a hearty thank you, Mark, to the staff for organizing the event. Your words and saying of inspiration to potential future commission members or even electeds, to me is really a great moment. To have somebody have some flavor of experience of what our community is in those interested in leadership roles, it's a great opportunity. So I'm very grateful for the energy and the time that the staff took to put it together.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, I just again, like Dan said, thank the staff and yourself, Mark, as well, putting this together. The questions that we got from our students were fantastic. And I think we have a new group of citizens who can maybe help jump in when some of those questions come up on Facebook or other social media or in a conversation at the grocery store, that they are now better equipped to answer some of those questions that come up.
Wendy, did I detect?
Just gonna say, very, very honored that the staff put all that together. That's a huge list. And it's probably just the tip of the iceberg of what's going to be happening next. So yes, great for new leadership, but also great for anybody that wants to find out a little bit about their government.
And of course, we couldn't have done it without our partners. They did an amazing job. And I got to say, everybody was really interested in the water and sewer district. I was surprised. Jay did a great job, but as many times as I hear some of these things, I learned some more from him. So.
Thanks, Wendy. So with that, looks like I want to make particular mention of a couple of folks. David Gaynor, who's here, is going to snap some photos as we go through, was at each one, if not, he missed one. So he was at most of them. And then Tate Garcia did all of the printing and collating and all of that stuff. And then I'll thank Kelsey in advance. She's going to help by reading the graduates' names as they come to get their photograph taken. And so when that occurs, we're going to do it alphabetically. So when Kelsey calls your name, kind of make your way up to this area right here. And so, Mayor, if I can ask you to come up, we're going to take an individual photo, get your certificate, come back around. And then at the end, we're going to ask everybody to come up and get a group photo with council members as well. And so give me 1 second to get over there, and then we will start.
So first up is Lynn Atkins. Linda Ball. David Barker. Rick Berger.
I tell you, as many times as Rick has stopped by the farmer's market over the last 6, 8 years, however it's been, I think he probably could have taught the class.
Brian Kuda, Katie Ferris, JJ Hernandez, Mike Kennedy, Gary Kugel,
Gary, remind us how long have you been delivering life?
3-4 weeks.
Yep.
Lurica Kugel, Joe Mann, Joyce Mann, Anna Marie Megerdician,
Thank you for having me.
Kim Schmidt, Dean W. Spratt. Not here. And Sydney Wheeler.
We want to try to get a group photo here. So David told me if necessary, I have to lay across the floor. Come on up and let's figure this out.
You want us to come around or stand back? Okay. Well, I'm just getting out of the way.
All right, Council Bill and I. Like each other. What we do. We got to bond it over there. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, I like the one. I like going.
I can't see your face. If you can't see my face, I can't see.
Nobody wants to stay?
I don't know, they loved it so much, they're leaving.
Oh, yes, very, yes.
Okay, all right, now it's like, now that we seem to have regrouped, the next thing on our agenda, not quite as fun of a topic, but Councilmember Kurtz had brought up wanting to discuss the length of council meetings, so she's going to run this little discussion, and it's 6:17, so we've got a bit of time if we need it.
Well, the end of, I don't know if it was last meeting or the meeting before that, our meetings have been going late until 11 o'clock, sometimes 10 o'clock. And I know that some of that has been a topic that's engaged a lot of the community members, and that's taken some time too. But what I felt bad about at the last two meetings was that Lisa and we had some other presenters too who came, and I think that they felt rushed in presenting information to us. And I just want to make sure that if we have presenters internally or externally to the city, that they have the opportunity for us to ask questions and not feel rushed, and we don't feel rushed either in the meetings. I don't know if some of that will subside as a library topic, depending on where the direction that goes. But having us here, having city staff here, having residents here until 11 o'clock at night doesn't seem like it's the most ideal time to do the city's business. And so I'm wondering if anybody has any thoughts on how we could do things differently, whether it's organizing the agenda differently, whether it's meeting more frequently, just looking for ideas to see how we could not be meeting till 11 o'clock consistently.
Okay, floor is open. Councilmember Dunn.
I'd initially say organizing the agenda would be a great opportunity. Specific to try and identify where we have perhaps more than should be for a particular time period, recognizing specifically if there's topics which require additional time. So I'll do my best in terms of there's great work. I recognize, Mayor, for the advanced agenda. We discuss that at the end of each meeting, but I'll try and work to identify where I think there may be excessive count of items for an agenda.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Van Orman.
Always putting things on your consent agenda usually speeds things up a bit. You're right, kind of manipulating a little bit as far as the agenda, so our public can be heard. It's nice to have so many people inside of the city council chambers, but the bottom line is we still need to get business done. And I was from the old school that we were here until midnight, many a nights, getting things done. So it's just a matter of how busy we are.
Anybody else? Well, I know, there are other jurisdictions do other things with citizen comments a lot differently. I like personally that we give our citizens ample opportunity to comment, because I know not everybody does, not everybody gets, 3 minutes, but maybe something to consider for the future. I know our standard is 3 minutes, but if we say we have X number of citizens lined up for comments, we cut everybody to 2, so everybody has the same amount of time, but we get to hear from everybody. Just want to throw that out there as an example. I don't know what that cutoff would be or how we would know for sure, because we never know who's going to pop up online, but that is an option. But I do think, it's extremely valuable that we keep the time allotted for our citizens to comment. Possibly, could we move reports and inquiries maybe to the farther down? Well, not necessarily farther down in the agenda, because we do have fire department, community engagement, all of those as well, who we don't want to have to keep here till all hours of the night. So open to suggestions as well. Go ahead, Councilmember Kurtz.
I'm wondering, as the city's growing and we've got a lot of projects coming up, and especially we did this during budget season too, but I'm wondering if we do need to start meeting every week, possibly for shorter periods of time to be able to have the time to dedicate to the topics. I don't want to change anything with citizen comments. Personally, I think that people having the ability to communicate on all the topics is good. But I think we are growing. There are different times of the year, especially last year, I think, where we were meeting for a good chunk of time there every week with special meetings and things too. So I don't know what people think about that. So that's one of the ideas that I had as well.
Councilmember Solberg first.
I like the idea of, if we have, say, more than X number, and we have to decide with that number of citizens that want to talk on a topic, just like during the legislative session. The bills that are the most popular have lots of people that are testifying, and you get down to 45 seconds is all you get, which is about enough to introduce yourself. So that's too far, but 2 minutes would be reasonable, and to cut it down, because we had a couple of times that we had 20 people here.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's over an hour of testimony, and then we all needed a break. And the other thing is, and I don't know whether we need to make it a set number, but I think that also, if we consider our citizens' comments important, then maybe we should cut our time down in commenting. And so maybe the first go around, you have a chance to say what it is that you need to say. And the second time you've got a minute, something that you forgot or something you wanted to add to it. But when it goes on and it becomes that we're talking, and especially as it went to we're talking at each other instead of with each other, I think that's.
Yeah, and that's something that Ann McFarland, our Jurassic Parliament guru, has suggested in several of the trainings that I've been through of hers, to limit council comments to whatever time frame you guys would want to come up with for the first pass, and then again, like you said, reducing it for the next, so that we make sure that everything gets said, it gets said succinctly, and then we move on. So good suggestion. Does anybody else have a comment before I move back to Councilmember Dunn?
Sure, I'll weigh in. And I brought this up previously. Sometimes the length of the presentations get long. And if you're going to put any time constraints on anything, I would start there. Secondly, I'm not in favor of limiting council discussion at all. There should be no time limit on that. If we're here until midnight, sorry, Tom, but depending on the topic, right? You want to, for me, you would want to encourage robust discussion in this council chambers, not try to stifle it. So if we're going to try to manage our time wisely, it's in the presentation section. I would add, who puts together the agenda every month?
We meet every week on the agenda, and depending on what comes up, we shuffle it around, so we're try not to be too heavily loaded
So
on those
that's
topics.
the other key to this is if you've got, for example, on May 16th, we had 3 presentations, and we had a report from the mayor, the city administrator, Parks and Arts, Library, Planning Commission, Liberty Lake, and I want to hear from them. But you have to step back and look at the big picture of the evening and decide, what else do we have on the agenda? And as you look through those, these first 3 were, I think they took all of 3 minutes. Then I go to the next one. That one took all of 2 minutes. That one was a slam dunk. That one's a slam dunk. They're all slam dunkers. There's not going to be much discussion, especially if it's already been budgeted, right? It's not like we're asking for anything additional. So we've already agreed to the budget once. So it's just a double check when it comes back up. So I think the ordinance discussion is eaten up way more time than normal.
Mhm.
So I would think that's the exception to how we do our business, not the normal. So if you look previous last year, you said we had special meetings. We did a lot, but those special meetings seem to always come around budget discussions, budget talks. Or capital facilities. It's the big topic. It's the $1 million discussions. And I don't have a problem having a special meeting for that. But I'm not in favor of a weekly meeting for 2 hours. I'd rather sit here for 4 twice a month if that's what it takes. But I just don't see that that we need to strangle ourselves time-wise when every month is a little different. There's no right or wrong. It's just managing the agenda. And I would say that's probably on the mayor to evaluate how much time each one of these are going to take. And then again, like you said, if you have so many citizen comments, you get 45 seconds. So that can be easily adjusted based on the scenario of the evening. So to put anything black and white and this is hard and steady, I don't think we're doing ourselves any favors by that. Thank you.
Councilmember Fisher, did you have
Yeah,
anything before we move on?
I'll just echo what Mayor Pro Tem Foyer just said. I think it is important for us to be able to have the time that we need to discuss amongst the council. I think it's important for the citizens to be able to comment. So yeah, maybe some of those reports, we could cut those down a little bit. And I know some of those have been coming via email ahead of time rather than, a formal report. So I think that's been helpful. And I would also say, yeah, I'd rather be here an extra hour or two on every other Tuesday than come for another 2 hours.
Right, and I think Councilmember Dunn, you had your hand up again.
Yeah, the additional meeting is required, I think, is a preferred option to a meeting that goes until 11. To be direct, we seek participation. We seek to have people engage. The audience and at 11, they're done. So my best suggestion is that we manage the agenda in time as best can, and then schedule special meetings as needed.
Councilmember Kurt, since you were directing this.
No, I mean, I think
item.
the idea of special meetings is good, but I think that as an example with the library thing, that's what I suggested a couple times and nobody wanted to do that. So we were here till 11. And we weren't done with the discussion. We were in the middle of it and we had to cut it off because we can't go past 11. So I think that's where some of the stops and back and forth stop and start piece happened. And at a couple of meetings at 11 o'clock, we were actually getting somewhere. So, I mean, I don't want to cut it off either. And I'm happy to stay as late as I can too, but I have a babysitter who has to get home too, personally. So I think that, if there's a way to better manage the agenda and the topics that are on there, I think that was one of the pieces that we're missing because we knew citizens were going to come. We knew they were going to talk. We knew we were all going to talk. But then that we have a loaded agenda in addition to something we already know was a big topic. So as things like that come up, other projects that come up, I mean, at some point we're going to be talking about the library and what to do with that. And we're going to be talking about other projects that we're going to be working on. We've got to be able to manage that agenda so that we do have the ability for all of us to talk about everything. I don't want to restrict that either. I don't want to restrict citizen comments. But I also want us to be making, good decisions and have our brains all working at whatever time it is at night.
And I do agree, some of our presentations do go long. We do give our special guest guidelines, but sometimes it's hard to time sometimes how long a presentation is going to be, but that's definitely a place where we can continue to be a little bit more encouraging to our special guests as to how much time they have. Because I know a couple of them have probably gone close to 15 minutes. Councilmember Sahlberg.
Well, with that discussion in mind and the fact that we have 25 minutes, could we potentially do our executive session at the beginning of our time instead of having to wait until the end again?
Is that enough time, Mark?
Maybe, but probably not.
Councilmember Foyer.
Yeah. If I can, I'd like to offer another suggestion. I don't fully understand why the agenda doesn't come out earlier. So I'm wondering how difficult is it to get it out to the council members not to the public, but to council members to review quickly. That's what I do whenever it gets published. I look it over quickly to see what homework, how much time I need to set aside for how much homework I need to do for the agenda for Tuesday. And because we don't get it usually until Friday at 5 o'clock. Right? So if we could get the agenda, say on Tuesday at 5 o'clock, that would give, I'm just throwing it out there, Mayor. If we could get it at Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, that would give all the council members an opportunity to weigh in on what's on the agenda to maybe help with this time issue.
No, well, and, you know, Kelsey, you know, has a lot of time is not getting what she needs until close to the deadline, which is noon on Wednesday, right? So, you know, I guess there's a possibility we could get out a very preliminary draft, because we meet at 9 o'clock every Tuesday morning, but it wouldn't have any documents to go with it. There's probably going to be things added to it with regards to action items. So there's a lot of things that come in. You know, sometimes it's because we're waiting on quotes to come in, or just some feedback from other vendors. But, you know, I guess, you know, why don't we've got our directors meeting tomorrow, and why don't we talk about that a little bit? Just knowing though, if we do that, it's subject to a few changes, and it won't have any documentation with it, most likely. Councilmember Kurtz.
To Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem's point there, it kind of goes along with what Dan had said too about just what's on the agenda. I don't think I would need the attachments. I just want to know what the topics are, because I think then we'd be able to say these seem like where they're going to take a while, or because for whatever reason, to give just some brief feedback. And I know what you're saying. I hear what you're saying about it. Later in the week, I mean, like Thursday, like the agenda with no attachments type of a thing, where we could see what's coming up. If we had any feedback about the topics and the length of time.
Well, let's put that on their agenda for tomorrow morning, Mark. And of course, I know Kelsey, you're not in those, but we'll obviously loop you into any discussion.
Just one further comment. I guess I'm wondering why the deadline, you have a deadline of Wednesday at noon? And that's for supporting documentation from anybody that we're looking for information from, department heads, anybody, is my assumption correct?
So the agenda bill is prepared, any supporting documentation that allows me the chance to review, allows Sean the chance to review before it gets compiled and published on Fridays.
When we meet every 2 weeks, bumping up that deadline by a day can't be the end of the world for everybody.
I'll interject if you don't mind, Mayor. So, and I understand the premise, but what happens, it may be staff is waiting on something from a third party. Or something comes to them, they turn around and have a response, and you think it's going to be there. And that stuff has to be done before it gets to me. And I may not get it until Wednesday at times. So for me to be able to turn around and get it back to Kelsey, if it's a 30-page contract or if it's something else, it's not going to happen overnight necessarily. So it varies. There's multiple staff individuals that are providing certain documents at a certain time, and they may not get them until Tuesday or Wednesday. And so between Kelsey and I working through to get the agenda finalized, it's happening essentially Wednesday and Thursday so that we can get it to the council members by Friday. So I think it's, from my perspective, I think if Mayor and Mark, if you can figure out the draft, I think there's a way to be draft, but by Friday, there could very well be another item or two, because something may come in late that staff was trying to get before the council to get approval, especially monetary things that require council approval for expenditures, that they want to be able to do that and don't want to wait another 2 weeks before the next meeting. Sometimes those things will come through, but I think from I'm hearing from standpoint of my perspective and review, once things get to me, would be, we put something in a draft form, say this is what the draft will look like, and it may or may not be the same on Friday, but at least from that perspective on my angle, I think that's probably workable.
We'll follow up. Councilmember Van Orman.
Again, sitting on STA board, we took a lot of the monetary things with the documentations in there and put it into the consent agenda. If we had any questions whatsoever, we could pull that out. But that would be one way. I mean, granted, it doesn't take that long to go through the individual, but that's one way to cut off a few minutes anyhow.
All right. and we'll discuss a little bit more with staff and come back with some thoughts. Next meeting. All right. So that brings us to 6:35, which gives us about 25 minutes break between now and when we start our 7 o'clock. So for those of you who've joined us online, I think one person, we'll be back at 7 o'clock to start. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday, June 6th, 2023 City Council meeting being held live here in person at City Hall and on Zoom as well. So again, those people who are more comfortable being at home can join us as well. We're going to go ahead and start with the invocation given by Councilmember Cargill, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us.
Our Father in heaven, thank you very much for the opportunity to come together as a community tonight to discuss the top issues and responsibilities that we have. We ask for your blessing on this meeting. We ask for your guidance. We also are mindful of what happened 79 years ago today and ask for your prayers and patience with us throughout the rest of the meeting tonight and to help us remember that anniversary. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and start off with roll call. Councilmember Cargill, Councilmember Kurtz,
Present.
Councilmember Van Orman,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Foliar,
Here.
Councilmember Spencer,
Present.
Councilmember Dunn,
Happy to be here.
Councilmember Solberg.
Here.
All right, all present and accounted for. We will go ahead and move on to agenda approval, Mayor Pro Tem.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the agenda. Any questions, comments? All right, not hearing any. All those in favor of approving the agenda as printed, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0. All right, we will dive right into citizen comments. Just a reminder for everybody here in person, we have these yellow sheets by the door over here. If you'd like to make a citizen comment, go ahead and fill that out and get it to Kelsey at the end of the table, and it will eventually make its way around to me. And for those online on Zoom, if you want to make a citizen comment, please send a note to Todd Henderson, our meeting host, in chat, and he will get my attention. Reminder of the rules of engagement. We've got 3 minutes. Everybody has 3 minutes. On their topic, I will stop at the 3 minutes if you're heading into going over. And when you come up, just name and whether or not you live in the city limits of Liberty Lake. So in person, and we'll give people online time to note to Todd. So Natalie Govan joins us.
Thank you. The veto was not reflective of the community.
The veto was not reflective of the community, and I think that most people who have lived here for 10, 20 years like I have would say the same. Based on a book that made it into the library that should never have been there to begin with. Now, the factions, there's 2 factions of people. Some call it porn or pornographic, others don't. If we did a door-to-door survey and asked and showed the actual images and asked, do you think that this is obscene? Because the Department of Justice says you may not, it's a federal offense, to distribute obscene material. Is this obscene or is it not? And I can almost guarantee you that the majority of people in this community would say it's obscene. And the library bought it anyway. So now here we are, fast forward to today. All we're asking people like me, I represent 3 voters in my household, is that we just simply follow the law. RCW 35A 27.010 says that code cities may exercise the powers relating to the acquisition, development, improvement, and operation of libraries. That means the city decides how a library operates. The library went against that and created their own code last year in September. And if this isn't correct, please feel free to correct me or us. That, you know, if this timeline is not correct. The library went against the code that was already in place as per the state and created their own policy. We don't want material like this in our kids' schools and in our libraries, in our municipal, meaning public libraries. The imagery is abhorrent, isn't it, Mr. Solberg?
This is not a back and forth.
Because I
Please
brought this
continue.
up and I first started posting on this in 2019. And somebody sitting on your council fought back and said, you're being egregious. And then went on to delete those messages. Interesting. Not a single message available. I hope the council will step up and just simply follow state law and the DOJ. That's all.
Okay, I'll need to stop you there. Thank you. Just a reminder to anybody commenting that this is a comment period only. There is no back and forth with the council. And just to make sure, Ms. Govan, you are live outside the city limits, correct? It's what's noted. You live outside the city limits?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Do we have anybody online, Todd? Well, I guess is there anybody else here in chambers? I haven't seen any more yellow sheets. Nope. All right, Todd, do we have somebody online that might want to speak? Bob Scadam. Welcome, Bob. And again, just remember to introduce yourself and whether you live in the city limits or not, and you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Bob Scottham. I've been a resident of Liberty Lake inside the city limits for the past 15 and a half years. And I'm also a member of the Library Board of Trustees. Tonight, however, I'm speaking about 2 upcoming events over the month of June and the month of July in support of the library. These are events that are put on by the Friends of the Liberty Lake Municipal Library. The first one is June 16th and 17th, which is our summer book sale, which is one of the largest indoor book sales in the area. Our hours on June 16th will be from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. And on June 17th, which is the Saturday at the same time that the Kiwanis has their citywide garage sale, we will have the book sale from 9 to 3 p.m. A lot of great books on sale. Everything is priced from 10 cents to, I think, a maximum of $2.50. The other event that I want to bring to folks' attention is our summer soiree, which is held in July, July 12th, which is a Wednesday from 5 to 8 p.m. It is being held at our co-sponsors, the Liberty Lake Wine Cellars, and either see something when we post it online, click on our QR codes to buy tickets, and after June 26th, we'll also have a silent auction. So those 2 events are coming up. All of the proceeds go to support library programs outside of the normal budget. So thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. All right. So one last chance, Todd, anybody else online? All right, I don't see anybody here. Just a reminder that there will be another Yeah, go ahead. If you could, when you're done, just make sure we have your contact information. So it's my name, city limits or not.
My name is Colby Goldman. My address is 23808 East 3rd Avenue, Liberty Lake, Washington. And I'm just a couple block outside, but I believe that anybody who live in 99019 can use the library.
Yes.
And I believe the subject affect us. Sorry. So first, veterans are symbol of what make our nation great and what we must never forget. All they have done to ensure our freedom. Rodney F. Thank you for all of the Liberty Lake and everyone who involved in making Liberty Lake home of the brave. And for the Memorial Day, And the sacrifice that they made for our liberty, I wish they would have more than a day or weekend to honor them. And I would like to thank you, all of you, and everyone who's making it such a special day. And every time I drive home, get off the freeway, the first thing I see the flag and the face of our soldier. I'm home. So thank you. Thank you for everybody's work. And to all the city council members, thank you for doing what the people of Liberty Lake elected you to do, represent their best interest. No matter how many name calling, the threat, the scream, the protest, you stood your ground and upheld your principle. That I appreciate all of you very much. I don't agree with Dan, Annie, or Tom, but I respect their courage to, and none of you ate the cake. The election will be your consequence for your performance. And I mean, that's what I meant for all of you. And for the mayor, I don't think you did anything wrong, but I think your lack of the courage as far as the veto, I think you should have done it before the election filing, because that would, I mean, you make all of them show their card, and I don't think you did the same, you did the same for them. And I have to criticize you a little bit, because I think you and the Liberty Board of, the Library Board of, the Liberty Lake Board of Trustees have the cake and eat it. That's all I have for comment. And if we have any room for the dog park in the city.
Thank
That's all
you.
I have.
If you can just fill out one of the forms and get it to Kelsey, so we make sure we have your contact information. Thank you so much. All right, Todd, just one last check. All right, so I guess we are done with the citizen comment. Again, we'll have another period during resolutions and ordinances to speak specifically on those topics, and another general citizen comment period at the end. But before we go on, Kelsey is going to just make note of any written comments that we received since the last meeting.
We received one written comment for this meeting from Melissa Pitt.
Thank you. And that was distributed to everybody, correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
point of clarification here. Kelsey, didn't we receive 2 others yesterday as well? I know I did. And I thought everybody was CC'd on it.
I did not receive it.
Okay, I'll look forward to.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on. We don't have any announcements, proclamations, or special presentations. So we'll go ahead and move on to reports and inquiries. First is City Council. Anybody have any reports from City Council? Oh, go ahead, Councilmember Van Orman.
I do. Since we last met, we had the PACE Awards. And for those that don't know what PACE are, it's Partners Advancing Character Education. We had 72 schools. 72 schools that were honored. They had chosen one student from each one of their schools to represent character. And they will, of course, be wearing honor robes when they walk down the aisle when they graduate. So that was amazing. We were able to do that not in 1, but 3 different award ceremonies. So if you have never been or don't know what PACE is, take a look at one. Our city hall also has on the reader board, the PACE trades. One comes out every month. So proud of them. Good
Great.
job.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else? Councilmember Spencer.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. After the presentation we received from Family Promise of Spokane at our last meeting, I was very impressed by Joe Ader's presentation. I received a personal invite to attend their kickoff event up on the South Hill. It was called A Night Without a Bed. And they gave a presentation. They had multiple people who had experienced homelessness with different family configurations, a single man with a couple of kids and his struggles to find services in the area. And so anyway, it was very impressive. The invite was to then go home that night and sleep somewhere other than your bed. So I slept on my couch. I'll say it wasn't as bad as actually some places I lived down in Panama when I served my mission, sharing living spaces with rats and cockroaches and things like that, large spiders. But ultimately it was just to help us to, get a little glimpse of what these individuals go through, like Joe said, sometimes it starts with couch surfing, with friends and family and ends in homelessness. So very impressed with that organization.
Great, thanks for telling us. All right, we have any others? Councilmember Dunn.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity on Friday of last week with Tom Solberg to visit e-gov classes for Ridgeline High School. Chris Larson, their teacher, had organized a presentation of sustainable cities. The students were tasked with preparing, we'll call it development code-like maps, presenting communities of their choice. And it was great to be able to understand the students' perspective on population, the mix of businesses and residences, and how the organization of the locations facilitates the community in the long term. I'm so impressed, both with Krista in terms of the presentation of the students, in terms of their preparation. I'm really honored and grateful that there are people and students in our midst like that. Shout out to Pastor Gary Moreno and the Legacy Church for their 3v3 basketball tourney on Saturday of last week. 45, three each teams showed up for 9 o'clock through late into the afternoon on a beautiful day. A great chance to get out together in the community. Neighbors meeting neighbors. I love that part. It's awesome. And then for the calendar, mark your calendar, June 17th, next Saturday, not this Saturday, next Saturday, is the yard sale for everybody. Yeah, be patient. Thank you. Yes, there'll be many visitors in our community on that day. So yeah, be prepared. If you're participating in the sale, have fun. If you're not, get out of Dodge, but last I just present, it is now just 43 days to the first ride on the Central City Line for Spokane Transit Authority.
Super, thank you. Councilmember Solberg.
Kudos to everybody that was involved in Memorial Day breakfast and the luminaries and the setup and everything. There's just too many names, but it came off so well, and our staff really helped out. And by the time it was all over, we finished our shifts and took everything down. Dan came by because he was off doing something that wasn't as important, stopped off and helped us take everything down too. So it was a well done job by everybody. Second, and this is for the council and for the mayor, I've been working with Tom Pauly. He was on the board of trustees here, and he is the VFW commander post 1435. In reference to your request to have more of a military presence. He's been asking the city to make a proclamation that Liberty Lake is a Purple Heart city. From July 25th of 2021, Washington State has been a Purple Heart state. Since then, counties and cities have been designating and proclaiming themselves to be Purple Heart. And all of the legwork has been done to make that happen here. So potentially at the next meeting, we might have a proclamation. We could have some signs, and I have examples of all of those. There would be no cost to us. There was already people that are supporting that, so that when you come into the city, not only would you have the hometown heroes, but you'd have the welcome to Purple Heart City. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for your work on that. Anybody else? Council reports. Okay, I'm going to start mine off, my mayor's report off with another congratulations to one of our city council members who has achieved the Association of Washington Cities certificate of municipal leadership. So congratulations, Councilmember Kurtz. She kept it kind of quiet, and little birdie told me that she had accomplished that. So that you should have gotten your certificate in the mail. And I know that you and Councilmember Spencer are going to be joining me at the conference this year. So we'll get some points to the advanced certificate. So looking forward to that. And briefly, I was able to attend the sustainability presentation as well last week. It was amazing the difference between some of the different groups and how they thought about different things. And if your only power is wind, what happens when there's no wind? So we had some really good discussions on that. And I volunteered some of our staff if they are requested to give a special presentation during the class next year, that we'll make staff available to help out with that a little bit. I also got to sorry, I'm having trouble tonight. Had a chance to go to another great event at Liberty Lake Elementary on Friday. They had worked with the fifth graders district-wide on their greetings and handshakes. So I was able to, along with, I know Phil Champlin was there too, along with a whole bunch of other people that we are used to seeing around the city. So the fifth graders, there were two people per each classroom, and we went around the entire class, and the fifth graders came up, shook our hand, looked us in the eye, and greeted us and introduced themselves. And my arm was a little sore after a couple of them. Didn't really want to let go, but I give them credit for sticking with it. And I think everybody did a really, really good job. And I invited everybody in the class where I was to stop by the farmer's market to engage with whoever's there at the city tent at the time and practice their handshakes. So it was, I think I scared a couple of the kids because I'm like, is your mom so-and-so? Their eyes got real big and they wondered what they did wrong, but it was a great day. And they're going to continue that in the subsequent years and trying to get it spread more across the community to some of our other districts. So real fun way to end a Friday. So quick, some other quick things from my report, Mark. Speaking of the farmers market, the first 3 weekends have been amazing. For those of you have been on usually on the opening weekends, we are fighting wind and rain. And I remember pulling up last year, and I pulled up and the tent was up. And by the time I got out of my car and I came around the bathroom, the tent had totally blown over. So we've been very lucky the first 3 weekends. And thank you to those from the Community Engagement Commission and library who have been there to help spread the word on some upcoming events. So that's going really well. A lot more vendors, I think, than in the past. So come on up if you haven't been there and check it out. Lisa and I were able, and Mark were able to attend the Legacy Ridge HOA meeting a couple weeks ago with regards to Jake's townhomes that are being going in up behind Chevron and Legacy Villas. So it was a good meeting. Lisa did an amazing job presenting the project and what had been considered, and answered the HOA's members' questions very well. And so I'm really glad to be able to have that opportunity. And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, who is still president, I believe, of the HOA up there. So for helping facilitate that, because whenever we can get in front of citizens who are concerned about a project, that just, it makes the conversation much easier to get ahead of things. We had planning commission interviews over the last couple of weeks. You'll see our appointee on the agenda for tonight. I believe he was traveling. He is trying to try to be here by Zoom for the council to ask questions if timing permits. We also interviewed Civil Service Commission applicants. We chose 3, and those will be a couple meetings out. We're working on the background checks. Lots of regular meetings, GSI, Greater Spokane Valley. We had promotion of our 3 corporals at the PD, and upcoming public service awards with the chamber on Thursday, SRTC admin and board of directors meetings, and more Valley Chamber meetings. And just one last nice little story. So Councilmember Dunn talked about the Legacy Church 3-on-3 basketball tournament. When I was at the farmers market, I heard sirens going, and whenever I hear a siren, I always pull out my Pulse Point app, and I could see that the sirens were going down toward Legacy Church. And when I got there after the farmers market, I was talking to a couple of our officers, and then in church on Sunday, I started going not too long after the city bought the building. Pastor Gary told the story of the gentleman who had gone down who required the medical assistance. So it was a parent of a 4th grader. Plenty of people there on standby, got him up and going, and ambulance, by the time they were loading him into the ambulance, he was talking, doing okay. And he insisted that his son, who's a 4th grader, and his wife stay to finish out the tournament. We fast forward through the tournament to the championship game, and it's 4th graders, and it came down to the last second, and the game was tied. And guess who sunk that last second basket to win the game? It was that man's 4th grade son. So he did his dad proud. So it was always good to hear those great stories. I will now turn it over to City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. If you look at the list of events on the report that you have in front of you, the first several are library related, and Bob mentioned the first one in his comment, so I won't retread on that. But we've got the summer reading program kicking off on June 20th. And then later that week on the 22nd, Eric Herman, music and comedy over at Ridgeline High School. Those are all summer reading kickoff related. Won't be too long, couple of weeks. The AWC annual conference is in Spokane. I know a group of us will be attending those sessions. And then it's within a month of the July 4th fireworks and concert here at Pavilion Park. And so just a few reminders of upcoming things. Any questions about events before we move on?
Just a quick plug, if I may. So earlier on the 4th is always the bicycle and golf cart parade down by Alpine Shores. And on the 3rd of July is the boat parade. Most of the festivities will be going off at the beachy area at the south end of Moulter there. And so everybody decorates their boats, and there's always a winner, and there's a great band playing again this year.
So
So,
Slim and the Tail Draggers.
Yeah, no, I was talking at the boat parade, there's a band, but yes,
Oh my
great,
goodness.
great, great band for the concert on 4th of July.
so I initially heard goat parade. And so I'm trying to envision,
Use that too.
yeah, okay,
Let's make it happen.
We'll put that on Jen's list.
all right, yeah. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that council was aware that our library director and her husband, who's also a city employee, Jacob, added a new member to their family last week. And so we have an interim library director for the duration of Jandy's absence, and that's Michaela's still here. Michaela Kittlestead is going to be the interim library director. That was effective on June 1st, and it'll go through some period through early October. So Michaela, you want to wave and say hi? And most of you probably know Michaela, but all right, any questions about that one? All right, last item on my report, strategic plan update. You all got to meet and see the graduating class earlier from the academy. And so what we've asked for that group to do is to come back as a focus group when we get the results from the survey, which closes on July 2nd, to kind of coalesce all of that information into a package that we're going to bring back to City Council. And so I want to talk a little bit about what that next step is. We had a half-day session back on March 4th. I would propose we have something similar, maybe not as long in duration, to take all of that information that we get from the resident feedback, marry it together with what we collected during the March 4th session, and come closer to that framework for a final strategic plan that we would then polish, refine, and bring back ultimately for adoption sometime late September, early October timeframe. So a couple of possibilities, just given the timeline and other things going on. And these are both Saturdays, and we don't have to do it on a Saturday. But August 19th or 26th would be possibilities. So what I would suggest is me sending out several options like we did in the past and just getting everybody's feedback based on looking at your business and personal calendars and letting us know what the most availability is, and then we can schedule based on that, if that's a good plan. I see nodding heads. No concerns with that? Okay, so that's what we'll do, and we will update you on that within the next couple of weeks. We're planning on having that focus group established by probably the second week in July. It won't take us very long to assemble all of the information. Zen City does a fantastic job of providing reports on the analytics. And so we'll turn that around fairly quickly and have that group assemble. We'll probably meet twice just to make sure we've covered everything. And then we'll get the council, the follow-up session scheduled and have that discussion. Any questions about that? All right, awesome. So Mayor, that concludes my report.
Okay, all right, we move on to Parks and Arts Commission. Nancy, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Nancy Hill. I'm the Chair of the Parks and Arts Commission, and I'm excited to give you an update on our Hooptown mural. And we'll wait for the slide. And there it is. This is our project to do a full court mural. It's actually on a double court that's located in Pavilion Park near the skate park, along with a budgeted court resurfacing. We've submitted the call to artists. We had 19 awesome submissions received from 7 different artists, and we formed a selection committee. And thank you, Councilmember Dunn, for sitting on that. We had a great committee and wonderful feedback from our community members. We had an art kind of person, we had a basketball person, and we had a lot of fun looking at it. We evaluated the pieces based on vibrancy, community ties, and then the overall strength of the image. Next slide, please. What came out of the committee was the selection of this as the recommended mural. It's called We Got This by Danielle Davis, and it really has that Liberty Lake together feel. And when we looked at the selections, you can still see the court lines, and it's not too busy, but it's powerful. And the Parks and Arts Commission last night recommended as a motion that we move forward to City Council to show you what we think is the best method forward. And I think you'll see later on your agenda tonight of approval of the artist agreement. So we're hoping that you agree with us and that will move forward. This kind of led to another conversation. If you go next slide, we'll look at one more look at the image, which is like awesome. And then next slide, please. So that brought up some conversation. Is the skate park's next door? It could use some sprucing up. It's had some problems with vandalism and then the maintenance associated with repairing that vandalism. And there's been, if you kind of go over the graffiti feel, then maybe you reduce graffiti. It's an idea. So we're going down that road to consider that. So look for something from that in the near future. We also found out last night that Spokane Valley Tech School has pretty much completed the Story Walk project for Orchard Park. It's going out to powder coating, and they're looking at probably August as an install. So we're very excited about that. The innovation and the work of those students was just incredible. And I just can't say enough about that. They did the one at Rocky Hill. Of course, the students rotate through, but this last group have been so impressive. And finally, on Parks and Arts, we've been talking to our Community Engagement Commission. Imagine that, discussing things with each other about how we can reach out in the community. And we're excited to see where that's going to go. Any questions tonight?
No, great work. Selection's amazing. Councilmember Cargill.
Nancy, you said there were 19 different options or 17?
19 different submissions. Some artists submitted more than one design.
Is
Yes.
there a way that perhaps in the future we can consider doing the other basketball courts with those, even if they don't have the Hoop Town designation?
Yeah,
Just an
I
idea.
love that idea, just like the story walk.
Yeah.
We're kind of moving around, and that would be my goal because I love it. It's really functional art.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Oh, I just had one question.
Sure.
So were there any artists that were from Liberty Lake?
I
the
believe
group?
they're in conversation, if I recall, and Dan, I believe there was at least one from Liberty Lake.
Cool.
But most of them were from the surrounding area, and many had ties to Liberty Lake, which was nice.
Great.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Next up, Community Engagement Commission. Robin.
Good evening, everyone. Better readjust here, sorry. So, Madam Mayor, I couldn't agree with you more about how the farmer's market has been the last 3. Great weather, and so when I was asked to do the update today, they said, well, do something on the farmer's market. I thought about it, and I want to give you some takeaways from my perspective and lens. And I enjoyed the farmer's market. I think it's just one of the city's biggest gathering places. I know that so far, the audience and the participants or the public that we meet, they've enjoyed our handouts. We really do, I think, go through quite a few handouts. Some of them are included, they're not limited to like yoga classes, soccer, summer festival, strategic plan survey. Give them quite a few handouts to take the survey. Another popular topic is construction. Found out that many people have been asking about Harvest Parkway and the slip lane. Again, it's what I've experienced. And survey for the gathering data for the strategic plan. Initially, the CEC had talked about and said, it's a great program, but when we could use the iPad and help facilitate the people in the audience, but haven't found that the participants are wanting to use iPads so much. They enjoy maybe listening to about the strategic plan, but would just rather have the handout, take it home, do it themselves, rather than stay there at the farmer's market. That's their preferred option. That's what it has been so far. So moving on, Nancy mentioned about the collaboration between the CEC and the P&A Commission, and we are collaborating on a plan and the survey. And it's for their dog park. It's really to explore and research the interest for a dog park. And so we'll be looking at this survey and to start, we hope, around or after the completion of the strategic plan survey. So last month, they came and gave us a presentation at our CEC meeting. And so yesterday, we came and attended their meeting, and I should say Monday, and provided some additional information on how best to move forward between our groups. We're not only looking forward to collaborating on this project with the Parks and Arts, but also on future projects with them too. And also we're looking forward to on collaboration with other city departments. So if you've noticed, time flies by. And one of the things that we did, CEC did, was to put out, it was called the summertime event calendar. And we will soon be starting to distribute already the springtime was that initial one that we'd put out. And then now we're going to be looking at distributing and putting out the summertime event calendar.
Yeah, I don't know how many of those were in the box for the farmers market on Saturday, but we ran through them within the first couple hours.
We do.
Yeah.
I know. Yes, I was explaining that, and David and I were talking. I said, you need to get some more handouts there. People are really interested in that. So are there any questions?
Don't see any. Thanks, Robin. We appreciate you being here and spending your time with us on Saturdays. Okay, next up, Spokane Valley Fire Department. Oh, I was hoping we hadn't lost you.
Surprise. Good evening, everybody. My name is Zach Bond. I'm a Deputy Chief of Operations for the Spokane Valley Fire Department. We're proudly serving the city of Liberty Lake. And just a little bit about us, just as I get into these numbers, we operate out of 10 fire stations, and that includes 9 primary response vehicles, which includes 9 fire engines and 2 ladder trucks, including some support vehicles. Your Fire Station 3 is the primary response station that covers your city. So if you've seen this report, which I'm sure you probably have, it's very data intensive and graphs. I'm going to try and really move through it. So if you have any questions and want to stop me on something, please feel free. So starting right in for the May response totals, 2023, incident summary. So an incident is the calls for service or calls to 911. For the month of May, just shy of 2,000 incidents. And year to date, we're just shy of 9,200 incidents. Broken down by call type there to the right, the blue bar graph there shows 1,577 EMS calls or emergency medical services, followed by nearly 200 fire suppression calls. Moving down to the bottom half, our response total, and this is the number of times our vehicles are responding because several of our incident types require more than one vehicle. The number of responses for the month of May, 2,516. Our year-to-date response totals are approaching 12,000. I always like to highlight a few of the busiest units in the department, as well as Engine 3, which serves Liberty Lake. So our busiest 3 fire engines, Valley Engine 7, 312 for the month, Engine 1, 271, Engine 8, 241, and then looking at Engine 3, 156 calls for service in the month of May. This slide shows our response by aid type. So we operate under a very robust mutual and auto aid system where we rely on our partners to subsidize units with incidents where we need help from the closest unit. We don't really care what name is on the door. We just want the closest units there. So breaking this down, Spokane Valley Fire receives aid from the City of Spokane, District 9 and District 8 pretty much equally. We get service inside the city primarily by the City of Spokane on the west side, about 55%, followed by District 8 on the south. We handle approximately 93% of all of our calls within the boundaries. And that other 7% accounts for areas within our jurisdiction where another jurisdiction is closer, so they get there faster. Next slide, please. So just another way to look at the different response areas. So I'll highlight Station 3.
serving Liberty Lake. It's the light blue kind of down left-hand side of the pie graph there. It accounts for 7.68 of our total responses within the department. Next slide, please. So this one further breaks our call types down. By far, our highest numbers are for calls for advanced life support, and that's for EMS calls, emergency medical services requiring the services of a paramedic. And the red lines are 2022, the blue lines are 2023. So we're right about where we were last year this time. And with ALS, we're looking at just over 4,500 runs. And then for basic life support, we're just shy of 3,000. Next call, please. Or next slide, please. So another way to show the types of calls we're going on, and then the one on the left with all the colors there is just month by month. Traditionally, as we entered into the warm months, we're getting into our busy season. So July, August, and December are actually our 3 busiest months traditionally. So we're entering into our busiest time of year. And last slide, please. So those graphs show our call changes year over year. So 2020 showed COVID. So we were down that year. And then the big jump moving into 2021. And then another big jump moving into 2022. We're just shy of where we were this time last year in 2022, but we're expecting that jump to happen once we hit our busy months. And that'll do it. Any questions for me?
Oh, right. Councilmember Solberg.
Yeah, thank you, Chief, for your work. Frank gave us a promise that we weren't going to be seeing the big hook and ladder out on some of the advanced life support and the EMS calls. How's that going?
It's going great. So we're currently, we were just talking with the chief of police outside. Recruitment is difficult for public safety these days now, if for us in the fire department. So we're down a number of people. So right now that's resulting in one of our alternative response units or our squads, which is one of the SUVs you see out for lower acuity calls. That one of those units is down because we just don't have the people. We're hoping that with academies that we're running constantly, we just started the second one of the year this week. We're going to get both of those units back up. Additionally, Chief Soto has worked very hard to get an engine 10, which is your closest fire station to the west, with, although not a small unit like an SUV, it's not a ladder truck. It's going to be a fire engine, which is going to really bolster this east end of town with better protection and smaller units to handle the right calls.
You've had enough equipment on your calls to not need to have that big rig, the warehouse, running the wheels off it.
Right. You know, those vehicles cost just shy of $2 million, and they're necessary and required for the types of calls for service that we get. But to your point, we want to send the right unit to the right call. And the ladder truck is not the right unit for an EMS call. But in cases where it's the closest unit, we don't want to delay service because we do have EMTs and paramedics on that truck as well. So if that truck is the closest, we want to get that help to our citizens as soon as possible.
Good management of resources. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thanks so
Thank
much
you.
for the update.
Thank you.
Hey, Liberty Lake Water and Sewer District. I don't see anybody here. Oh, there you are. Bill, you hiding on me. Good to see you.
Welcome, Mayor and City Council. I'm Bill Genoway. I'm a commissioner for your Water and Sewer District. So we're moving into our busy season. We're going to pump a lot of water. All the grass that's around here is going to be green. Some of the supply chain issues that we had, which were critical for a while, they seem to be resolved. So we're not going to have to stop commercial building because we didn't have enough equipment to, bring them up to on the line. So we awarded a bid for our administrative building remodel. So that's going to move forward. We got a couple of projects down here on South Liberty Lake Drive. And so that'll keep our crews busy for a while, inspecting those projects. We've had a great response on our backflow testing program. People are on board with that program, and it's working remarkably well. Hats off to all of our residents and all of our customers in the district. But all I have. Any questions?
Anybody? All right, thanks
Thanks,
again, Bill. All right, we are moving on to workshop discussions. This brings us to Chief Simmons. Thanks for joining us. What happened? So I've been looking forward to this ever since the cameras started to be installed, and seems that every week or more we have another story of how these have been so effective. So looking forward to seeing your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of the council. I'm really excited about this today too. This has been a tremendous resource for us. Next slide, Todd. So bottom line up front, council, we want to buy it. We want it. It's a great resource for us. I mean, I can't speak highly enough. It's been such a tremendous resource for us, not only for us, for our region. Talking a little bit outside of our jurisdiction, the Spokane County Sheriff's Office is preparing to order 29 more out of the 100 and something odd ones that they have. Airway Heights is on board now. EWU, I just spoke with Chief Day. He's on board now. He's getting ready to purchase. So it's going to be a tremendous regional asset for us when they're all connected and have them all up. Excuse me. Next slide, Todd. All right. So what are they? This is what they look like. Couple of important things for you to know, and kind of a review, because I think there's some council members that weren't here during our first talk about these in April of 22. This is what they look like. They capture images only. We'll talk a lot about that here in a little bit. But the images they capture are from 20 to 90 feet, and that's of vehicles only. And the vehicle can go up to a speed of 100 miles per hour, and it'll still capture that image. Next slide, Todd. So the important things, what we get objective data to give us leads in criminal investigations. We get vehicle details only, vehicle details including images of the vehicle, description of the vehicle, and license plates. It does have the ability to recognize temp stickers or temporary license plates in windows. It doesn't read those, but it knows that one of those placards or something's posted in the window that's probably a temp. The important thing, and I know there's been some buzz just recently on Facebook about the cameras and some concerns. It doesn't recognize people. It's not facial recognition, and it's definitely not traffic enforcement. So it's not a red light camera, and it doesn't take pictures because you're going 5 or 10 over. It's not a traffic enforcement tool. Next slide. So our officers, we get real-time alerts from what we call hot lists. And on those hot lists are stolen vehicles, missing people, individuals with warrants, and also important things that we need to know about, like potential terrorists or gang members. Cameras do act as a deterrent. One of the things that I've discovered lately, speaking of deterrent, in talking to a couple of our loss prevention managers in our stores in our city, they're finding that people are taking their license plates off their cars now to come shoplift. And so we still can determine vehicles and times and people coming and going, even though they don't have those license plate, because it knows vehicles based on headlights, tail lights, and things like that. So it'll read make, model, color, et cetera. So just because you take your license plate off doesn't mean you're not going to get caught. And one of the things that we're seeing is our clearance rates are increasing, especially for some of our serious crimes. And we'll go over that here a little bit. I'll give you some examples. Next slide. Again, what is it? It's license plate recognition only. It gathers objective data about vehicles only, not people. It alerts us to those vehicles that are on the hot sheets, those wanted vehicles. And it's used to solve crimes. It adheres to all state laws. It does not gather any personally identifiable information. And of course, we can't use it for immigration because that would be illegal because we're locals. And that data is stored and is deleted after 30 days. The retention rate is 30 days for that data. So one of the things that does for us is it keeps us on the ball. We have to be on the ball with our investigations. So that means when we get a follow-up investigation or we have a crime occur, our investigators or the officers have to be on it, get as much information as they can. If we believe that there's a vehicle involved, get that information from the Flock system and get that uploaded into our Axon system so we can have that. Because if we procrastinate, it's gone after 30 days. Next slide. the footage owned by, for us, that we gather out, from Flock is never sold by the company. Again, there's a 30-day retention rate. It's deleted after that. One of the most important things for us is it takes the human bias out of it. We're getting, again, objective data. So that, the chance that there's some form of human bias or implicit bias involved in identifying a suspect is kind of alleviated when we're getting that data from a system like Flock. It is stored on Amazon's cloud-based system, which is secure. There is an audit trail, and I check those all the time, and that's what this is from, this month's audit trail for me, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, the reason why I actually printed that off, but it is an example of our ability as administrators to audit the use of the system. Again, it's not facial recognition. It's not used for traffic enforcement. There's no personal identifiable information stored on Flock. And it's not connected to any other third-party databases like Carfax or our Department of Motor Vehicles or any other or entities like that. Next slide. So in April of 22, our city council, I presented to city council introducing this technology, and also in April, the first cameras were installed. So there's been people that have driven around town and they see the camera on the pole with the solar panel. A couple of things, it's not pointed at your house, I guarantee you. And it only takes still images. There's no video images. So there's been some concerns there and some questions. Most of them are mounted on poles installed by Flock. We do have, I think, 4 or so that's on Avista poles, and I can't remember if there's any on city poles, remember? I don't think there's any on city-owned pole, but I think it's Avista and the poles that Flock installed. Next slide, Todd. So typical monthly data. I was gonna do a trivia on this because it's surprising for me, and I have to look at the numbers and make sure it's okay. But this is from May the 3rd through June 1st, and we had 840,000 plate reads. And that's typical. A couple of weeks in, I'm usually at about a weekend, usually a little about 240,000, somewhere around there. And a lot of those are repeat reads, but that's the data that we're getting. Next slide, Todd. This is searches done by officers, and that's what this data is right here. And you can see this is proactive searches done by officers. It's great to see how many officers are using it to make sure that it's a reliable tool for us, and also to make sure that there's no misuse of our system. So if you look at this, you can see what they're searching and the reason for the search. Suspicious, a rape investigation, theft investigation warrants, et cetera. So next slide, Todd. These are our hot list hits over the last month, and that just means by day how many wanted vehicle hits we're getting for the month of May. And you can see it just kind of goes up, and we can use that data in the future to kind of determine those timeframes where the stolens are coming through, and the wanted persons are coming into the city. Next slide, Todd. So the Flock system was an immediate success. I don't know which council members were around at the time, and I know the mayor probably remembers this, and I don't know, Mark, if you do, but the first crime that we solved with the Flock system was done by me. And I just wanted to let you know. And it was a semi truck that damaged some city property in a hit and run. And I think it was like $10,000 worth of damage, or 10 or 15. It was a lot. But hit and run, this image right here is actually from a witness. He wasn't able to get the license plate, so he kind of told me where the truck came from. I used the system to search the cameras in that area, and right on time, boom, here comes the truck coming in, license plate, and we were able to follow up on it. And Officer Kelly Jensen followed up on it, and I can't remember what the results of that was. He contacted the company. The next one was solved by me. And
I'm thinking the chief needs the help with delegation.
And so it was also, the city was also a victim. This is City Hall, right out front, right here. This is the suspect vehicle broke into some city trucks and stole some items out of a city truck. This was one of our repeat offenders for the county. He just received his vehicle back from doing vehicle prowls in Airway Heights. So they did a search warrant on his vehicle. He received his vehicle back. He comes out here to Liberty Lake to do vehicle prowls. And so we were able to identify him and follow up on that. And in that one, I think we didn't have enough to identify him personally, but at least we received a suspect on that one. Next slide, Todd. Some other examples. This was a recovered stolen vehicle in 2022. I remember this one because I helped out Officer Arnold on this one. The guy actually tried to duck us, and I thought he took off. He ran. He actually parked at Banner Bank and ran inside, which I don't know where he ran inside a bank with stolen checks on him. He had stolen checks. So, but yeah, and so we were able to arrest him for several things. And then the Valley detectives came out because they had a case on him too, because he tried to cash some stolen checks in the Valley about 10 minutes before that. So, but here's all jokes aside. We've talked about investigations. This is also a tremendous officer safety tool. So towards the end of 2022, there was a homicide in Tacoma. Unknown suspects' whereabouts. Coeur d'Alene PD pulls up on a suspicious vehicle. They go to contact the occupants. The gun comes out from this guy. The Coeur d'Alene PD officer draws, retreats. There were no shots fired. We believe she was driving. Other suspect, they take off. Coeur d'Alene PD puts the bolo out. Hey, homicide suspect in our area. So what do our guys do? Well, we better make sure it's not in Liberty Lake. They put the vehicle information in and they see, yeah, it's in Liberty Lake, like, right? So we're able to watch out for these types of things. We've used that several times in bolos that have been put out for officer safety reasons, and it's a tremendous tool because we do have, unfortunately, bad people like this come through. And recently, we have arrested several homicide suspects in our city. So next slide, Todd. Earlier this year, Safeway employee's vehicle was broken into. Our officers used the flock system to identify the suspect. That suspect was taken into custody. Recently, we had a drive-by shooting at the Country Vista Apartments. I think it was last month. Was it last month? Last month, a law enforcement officer's vehicle was shot up in the drive-by. We had several witnesses. They were able to give somewhat of a vague description. It was pretty late at night, so there wasn't a lot of vehicles on the road. Sure enough, we determined that, we were able to identify the suspect's vehicle and some potential suspects. The important thing on this one, and one of the great things about the flock camera system is we had one suspect vehicle. We didn't know there were two until we looked at some video footage from Country Vista Apartments and looked at the flock camera system, and they left, I think it was like 1:32 or something like that between the time they passed by the cameras that detected them leaving the crime scene. The following day, myself and several officers, along with Spokane PD, and their SWAT team, conducted a search warrant at the suspect's residence. Found a gun. We don't know if that gun was related to the crime, but I think he was an 18-time convicted felon or somewhere around in there. So he went to jail for possession of that firearm he's not supposed to be in possession of. So next slide, Todd. A couple of other ones. One of the things that we've been getting out of our stolens, a lot of drugs, a lot of money, a lot of stolen guns, a lot. I mean, a lot. Especially Mexi Blues, which are counterfeit fake pills that people believe may be a certain type of medication, but typically it's fentanyl. And so we're seeing a lot of that, quite a bit of meth again, which I'm really amazed at because fentanyl's so hot right now. But this 2023 example, a couple of months ago, there was a stolen that they received a hit on, located at Taco Bell in the drive-through. They devised a great plan, blocked him in, guy took off running, and he tried to pull a gun on our officers, but he was interrupted by the parking block at Walgreens. So he dropped the gun, they were able to take him into custody, And again, more Mexi Blues. Was there a gun in that one? I don't think there was, well, not the gun that he had, but I thought there was another gun in the car, but I can't remember. But yeah, more Mexi Blues, more guns off the streets to help protect our community. Next slide, Todd. One more. Oh, I'm sorry. Could you go back, Todd? I'm gonna skip a couple of these for the sake of time. But this one, I like this one right here from this year. This was just a stolen, nothing else involved, but this was a camera at our park. This was at Pavilion Park. And Jordan Rippey received a hit. And this vehicle had visited our parks probably 4 or 5 times. We could never catch up to it. Stolen SUV, but we recovered it at the park finally. But it goes to show that not only are the cameras that are on our roadways significant for us and useful, but also at our parks right now. Not just reactively when we get like a vandalism, see who was there or whatever, but proactively as well, because we do have these vehicles pull into our parks from time to time. The sex offender? Yeah, so I should have put that on there. So yeah, we had a vehicle over at Orchard Park, visited the park. I mean, what, probably 10 times? And we couldn't figure out why. He would pull in and pull out. He was there for a few minutes. It's a sex offender. Still don't know why, but we were able to put that information out to say, hey, suspicious activity, watch out for this vehicle. If you see it, whatever investigative action you can take legally, do so to identify the driver. It occurred over a course of a couple of weeks and then it was gone. So I'm assuming that there wasn't any good intentions there visiting a park, so. Oh, I'm gonna get to that one. Yeah, I got that one. I got that right here. Yeah. No, you're good. You're good. Save the gravy for last. Next slide, Todd. Just another stolen. There's a ton of these. I mean, I put a fraction of these up here. Next slide, Todd. Other success stories, we've recovered, I don't know how many stolen license plates. We also were able to develop some intel on how they're attaching some of these license plates to, and Tom will remember this. I mean, the only way you're going to determine that that plate doesn't belong in that vehicle is if you look at the VIN number. So we've told guys, hey, look, if you get, make sure you're checking VIN numbers on cars, because you'll go up, make contact, go through your stop, maybe not write a ticket, and you don't know that you're walking away from a stolen vehicle. So check your VIN numbers, because they're still in plates that are, I mean, the exact year, the exact model. I mean, they're getting good at it. So exact color. We've had a lot of agencies utilize our cameras, and I'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. In their investigations, that's agency assist out of agency is what AOA means. It's proactive investigation uses that I've passed that out so you all see that. And again, partner agency uses. Next slide, Todd. So this is the price per camera. That's it, $2,500. There's no storage fee cost. There's no installation cost. There's no maintenance cost. Just to let you know, this camera that we have now is a second generation. Flock came out and replaced all those first generation cameras for free. So technically we've had, the 19 original ones that we have, these are 19 new ones. So this is the next generation. They didn't charge us for that. So, next slide, Todd. Any questions? I think we skipped some slides there, Todd.
I don't know, what do you want to, I think most everybody has probably heard the story about what happened up at the trailhead.
Yeah, so just last night we had another stolen, so I was spilling. So Trailhead, it's an ongoing investigation, so I'm not gonna get into it too much, but there was a young lady who went up to that area to go hiking, and noticed a male sitting in a vehicle. Didn't think anything of it because, I'm assuming that that's not unusual since people use that area for hiking and recreation. She got out, and I believe she was starting to take some photographs of some flowers or something, and he came up behind her and attacked her. We don't know why. We can make some assumptions, but attacked her. She was able to fight away. I think she lost her phone in the process. She bluffed him. The bluff is what got her out of this. So she bluffed him, telling him that someone else was coming, and he took off. Long story short, we were able to use our flock cameras that happen in the unincorporated areas of Spokane County. We were able to use our flock cameras to identify that suspect based on her description and the vehicle description. Not only that, we used that vehicle, we were able to determine by doing a historical search, had been casing that area for about a week. So that was the investigative lead that led the Spokane County Sheriff's Office to that suspect and to his arrest. So.
Right.
But we do have 19 cameras. I thought I had a map in there. We have 19 cameras that are spread out throughout the city. Also, our partner agencies, for some reason, over the last couple of days has doubled. So we have access to cameras from the East Coast to the West Coast. Federal agencies, prosecutors, state agencies, I mean, you name it, which is, it seems like, I mean, why would we need that? But if we ever have, and I think I said this before, if we ever have an attempted abduction or any reason, you know, any other crimes where that someone's on the road and we have a direction of travel, potential destination, if there are flock cameras along that potential route, we can check those cameras to see if that person has traveled, which that's a tremendous leap when you start talking about investigating crimes out of state. When I was a detective, I did it quite often. It's difficult, but it starts narrowing down times and things like that. So tremendous asset for us.
Right. All right. Thanks, Chief. No, none from the audience. Sorry. Council, any questions for Chief? I know we've been anticipating this for a while.
Got a question, Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember
So
Spencer.
you mentioned that they upgraded us to the Gen 2. Is that the protocol then? So ongoing, if they come out with new ones, they'll just come out and replace them, or was that just for?
You know, I never
setup?
I never asked the rep.
Okay.
The only reason I know that they did that is because I stopped to ask a guy who was working on a camera, what are you doing? And he says, oh, I'm in town replacing all of your cameras with the new generation. I said, oh, that's great. And so I never asked Mac, but I can find that out.
Okay.
Well, I know when we sat through the original presentation that you had me sit on, and on, you know, it's really an as a service, contract. So if there's software updates, and that's one of the things they talked about, if there are hardware updates, it's kind of like having, you know, your information in the cloud. It's somebody else's server to take care of. And if they want to upgrade their machines, that's great. You don't have to do it. So that's similar, to what this service is for us.
And one of the things, Council, that I failed to mention is they have a VMS portion as well. So we have access to every DOT camera in the county. We had the old lady, the elderly lady that today get hit on I-90 at the scales. I was in the valley at the time. I was able to jump on that camera to determine, you know, exactly where it was at and if it was anything that maybe I needed to split more. That's awesome. And the reason I mention that is we can integrate all of our new city cameras. So that's all our parks, city hall, PD, library, facilities, any cameras that we have in the city, we can integrate into Flock. That allows every officer to have access to those cameras all the time. So there's no, oh, we got to log in, or I have to call Lieutenant Morgan or myself because we had something happen at the park, and can you log on to see if you can get some images for us? That alleviates all of that, and every officer can have access to that. And if you're talking about real-time crimes, like an incident coming out, the officers while en route can actually access those cameras. For example, if we have something happen at Pavilion Park, while en route, they can access those cameras. So they can get a better idea of what's occurring while they're en route. So, you know, the improved tactics and response and safety and all those good things.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the lumber theft part of this. It got my attention right away. A serious question though, you have 19, we're gonna talk about 19 more. Don't want to get into your business about where you're putting them, but are you planning to place any of them within HOAs?
Yes. So Flock has showed interest in HOAs. And so I just received that HOA list of all the HOA, the contact list. And so I think I'm going to contact each one of those, introduce them and see if it's okay if I can give, you know, those presidents and any representatives from those HOAs Flock's information, because that's where they started. They didn't start in public safety, they started in HOAs. They also have some contracts with like Safeway and Yokes and some other companies already. I have connected them with the loss prevention managers over there. And also I've connected them with Brian at the school, because there are also schools that use them. And I think as time goes on and these success stories are more prevalent, I think people will be more receptive to either exploring the option, especially HOAs and the businesses around here. One of the big ones is the marijuana shop. He was going to contact the owners there, and I don't know where they were at with it, and I can find out. But those places get broken into all the time, and so it'd be great to have something down there, not to monitor customers, but when and if that happens, at least we could potentially have some investigative leads.
A follow-up, is it not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to, is it your intent that the HOA pays for the camera or the city's gonna provide?
It would be the HOA.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be the HOA. Again, the nice thing about that is they could share the access to those cameras with us, and we would have access to that as well.
And is there a reason why we're not gonna provide them?
You want my honest opinion on that? It's not our job. It's just the HOA, they're private. It's a private entity, just like it's not our job to enforce traffic laws there unless they ask for us to, and there's only certain ones that we can't.
Yeah, I'm assuming it would require an MOU to have access to that once
Yeah.
put in.
Thank you, Chief.
I will, one thing that Chief didn't mention, just to be clear, we've been using these cameras for free for the last year. The deal was we would be using for free until the last one was put in which it was not too recently,
A
which
couple
is,
months ago.
yeah, which is why this is before you now. So we've had about a year of this service at no cost. And at first it was a 6-week or 60-day free trial period. Well, because of supply chain issues, it got dragged on. So we've got, as you've seen, plenty of data to back up how useful this is for the cost of a third of a detective. All right, anybody else have any questions? Councilmember Spencer?
Mayor.
Yeah.
So, but we are paying retroactive back to when they were installed, it looks like.
No,
No?
That date, if you look down at that, on that invoice,
Uh-huh.
it says that those dates aren't reflective of
Okay,
the actual.
okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So it's actually 5/19 of 23 to 5/19 of 24. Yeah.
Great.
all right. If those are no more questions, we'll move on to our next workshop discussion, and we'll have this up in one of our action items.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Chief.
Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, moving right along to Transportation Improvement Plan for 2024 to 2029. Lisa.
Evening, Mayor and council members. Well, Todd is pulling up the presentation real quickly. It is that time of year again. Can you hear me?
Look.
Is that better?
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Okay, so it is that time of year again. We are talking about our transportation improvement plan, the 6-year plan that we have to adopt by June 30th every year. Next slide, please. So it's a requirement of RCW, the Growth Management Act. It requires us to adopt this annually by June 30th. And if we hope to get state or federal funding for any of our projects, they need to be on this tip to be eligible for that. I have the SEPA documents all completed, and the only thing that I wanted to do was get some feedback from you on this draft tip before I put the final document together and send that out. We will have the SEPA review completed by June 20th. And we will have a public hearing and a resolution to adopt this on the council agenda for the 20th, therefore meeting the June 30th deadline. So we've got this. Next slide, please. So just kind of a reminder, how we we developed the tip. The tip really is based upon our 2023 through 2028 capital facilities plan, the transportation component, but it also involves those projects by others, those projects that are transportation oriented that are potentially TIF and LIFT approvable. In many of the cases, what you're going to find is that the costs have been adjusted, are updated to reflect an engineer's opinion of probable cost. So as we get closer and we get into design, one of the first things we do is get an update on that. So what has been a capital planning level cost is now we really tighten that up a lot. The timing for some of these projects has been adjusted to provide some balance to our workload as well as cash flow. So projects get moved up or down based upon changes in road conditions, et cetera, or potential funding sources. And we'll talk about that specifically in just a minute. If we push a project out into a future year, we're future valuing those costs based upon an 8.5% interest rate. That is the 5-year average for construction cost index inflation rate. So again, and as I promised you last year, I monitor this every year, and when that average comes down, you'll see this number come down also, but it hasn't come down yet. Timing for the TIF and LIFT eligible items has been adjusted by the sponsors, and Kyle and I meet regularly to understand when these other TIF LIFT projects are coming in. And we've also added a few projects based upon roadway conditions. Now you do have a copy of the document in front of you so that you can actually read it. I'm going to apologize about the next slide in advance, but you do have a document in front of you. The items in red have changed. And if you see, there's a notes column over on the far right-hand side, not on this sheet, but on the sheets I've provided you, that explains what has changed. And there's a couple that I just want to chat about for a second. So I want to point out that the first one, the TP1, is the Kramer Parkway overpass and the Harbor Road Bridge. As you know, the city had $6 million of skin put into that game. And while we have had some cost overruns on the Kramer Parkway project, it's one of 3 projects, the Harvard Road Bridge widening and ramp improvements and the Barker Road roundabouts. The good news is that Kyle and I, in our monthly meeting with WashDOT, finally, after several years of saying this over and over again and banging on the drum, said this is one project. The 2 projects they have closed out Harvard Road, they're about to close out Barker Road, and they're about $4 million under. And so while we do have some cost overages, WashDOT is now recognizing this as one project. So at the end, we won't know until the very end when they completely close out the project. But it doesn't appear that we're going to have any overages on this at this point. And it may take them a couple of years to figure out the accounting to see if we get some savings of the a share of the cost savings on these projects. That's going to be a longer discussion. But I thought I'd share the good news with you first of all. And so again, project's not done till it's done. So but it's the future looks bright. So that's the one that I really wanted to make sure that you were aware of. That was good news we got just last week. So the Country Vista rebuild and operational improvements, that has been bumped out basically due to trying to balance things that need to come up, as has the intersection improvements on Country Vista Boulevard and Appleway, adding the additional right turn lane to Country Vista Boulevard, is in design right now along with the Appleway overlay. Those were planned projects for next year. I want to come back to the timing on this once I talk about some other things that have changed on this. But that is in that, so that is being designed right now. We're going to bid those together and construct them together because we'll get some cost savings in terms of mobilization costs by doing that as those two projects together, even though they're technically separate projects. So we have that right now planned for next year. We also have bumped out our smart signal control as we got into the design of it a little bit. First of all, we cannot implement it until the Kramer Parkway signal is active. That's number one. But as we were looking at this, we discovered that the older signal on the network, the Moulter Appleway signal, doesn't have the radio technology that we've made sure was installed in all the others in the anticipation of creating the smart signal system. And so that one's going to have to be upgraded first. And surprisingly, the cost for that is more than the cost for the smart signal system, because all the other ones, we already had the radios. So that we knew that we could get it set up to talk together. So we don't have the money for that this year. And frankly, we're struggling with capacity right now. And so we have bumped that out to next year along with additional funds to upgrade that Moulter signal. So that's one that is a pragmatic solution. The stormwater master plan that was originally supposed to be completed by June 30th of this year, but because it took Ecology over a year to actually issue the contract and get that project started, we are behind the 8 ball and we have requested a grant extension. So we are expecting that is going to be continued through June of next year. We'll probably be done before that, but we're requesting a little bit of buffer. In part because when we get to the stormwater capital facilities plan and the fee thing, we want to bring it back to you, and we really don't want to bring it back to you in the middle of budget season. The next one that I'm really excited to talk about is the Mission Avenue overlay. It's TP11. And this one is, we now have cost estimates for it. The engineer's opinion of probable cost is 1.4 million and change. However, this has been recommended by SRTC for a preservation grant that would cover 75% of it. This we were going to do in 2025, but because the grant is available, we've moved it up to 2024. Now, SRTC did say that we didn't have to do it necessarily in 2024, but I want to just caution you that when you have a grant out there and it's on the table, the potential for it to get swept in future years is also there. So our recommendation to you is that we move this project up, but it does create a bubble in our work program. But again, a little bit over $1 million grant, I think, is worth shuffling our program just a bit. So the next one is Sprague Avenue overlay. The road is falling apart. We really do need to get that. We need to do the improvements to that. We've split it into 2 phases so that we're dealing with the portion that is in the worst condition. It may end up being that we have to do some partial reconstruction, kind of like what we did with Kramer. It's very hit or miss in terms of what the construction is. Some of it has very little pavement and almost nothing underneath. So that is something that it's in design right now. We will be going after a TIB grant for it. The other good news is that our stormwater and aquifer protection grant funds could also fund the stormwater piece of that, which is part of the problem. And so it will be part of the solution. Keep going down the line. The next changes we have to do with projects by others, and more than anything else. So the Harvard Road, Indiana intersection improvement, that was actually completed last year, but they requested TIF and lift reimbursement. So we want to keep it on here until they receive their TIF lift reimbursement. The Mission Avenue improvements, as you know, were constructed last year. But we haven't accepted the roadway and they cannot submit for reimbursement until we've accepted the roadway. We've got a repair project going this year. Actually, the potential exists that that may not even get, in the likelihood, I should say, exists that that won't even get reimbursed through TIF and LIFT until next year. And how that happens will depend in large part on how the repair process goes. And the Indiana construction east of Harvard Road, they did part of that. And so part of that was done last year. Part of that has been requested for reimbursement, and I don't believe it's been reimbursed yet, which is why it's still on the list for 2023. And then the Liberty Lake Road slip lane, we've reduced the cost of that because they came in underneath, under the engineer's cost estimate, even with contingency, and that is happening this year. We've added 3 new projects that are all preservation projects. One is Mission Avenue from the storage facility to Harvard Road. So that's the one section of the roadway that hasn't been part of this. And given that we've got a new roadway for the rest of it, we wanted to include that. I want to say that the timing of this will depend in large part on the 2024 pavement master plan and what the condition rating looks like. Same is true for the other 2. We've identified Moulter Road from Mission to Appleway as based upon condition. And we've also identified Country Vista Drive from Mission Avenue to Moulter. And again, all 3 of these, the timing of which will depend on really how these are prioritized based upon the pavement master plan that we're going to do next year. So, but we wanted to get them on the list because we know that looking at the condition, we know that they're going to be coming up in the not too distant future. So before I go on to this, there's not a lot to change in terms of sidewalks, other than the pedestrian allocation for this year, which came in under budget. And a couple projects for transportation projects by others, which have been added, and I can talk about those in a moment. I really wanted to point you to probably the biggest question that I have for you. If you look at the bottom line for 2024, we have almost $5 million in projects. The challenge that we have is one of cash flow, although the one that we added, the one that we moved into this is 75% of it is funded by a grant, keep in mind. But there's 2 challenges. One is the cost and cash flow, and other is capacity, staff capacity to manage those projects. Because of the condition of Sprague Avenue, and because we also think that that is a good candidate, we've been talking to the new TIB rep, that appears to be a very good candidate for TIB funding for next year. We really think that that one needs to stay on there. The condition is really very poor. Which leaves us with of the other major construction projects, that would leave us with bumping out the Appleway overlay and the right turn lane on Country Vista Boulevard, which I know is one that has been on there, that has been a priority. And so I wanted to bring that to your attention. I'd like to ask council to give me some feedback on this challenge that we have. Should we bring on more staff, or should we move a project out? Honestly, my preference would be to actually move the project out a year. But again, I'm deferring to you because I know that this is one that a number of people have asked about again and again.
So, Councilmember Cargill.
Lisa, actually, you just kind of read my mind because I'm looking at TP4, TP11, and TP15 and thinking that if we do all 3 of them next year, especially the folks in the Rocky Hill neighborhood are going to have no way to get out of there.
That was another thought. We would obviously time them so that wasn't the case.
Yeah,
but be that as it may, you're right. It would be an awful summer construction.
So I'm just wondering, because of that, if your suggestion about moving the Appleway, so I guess the TP4 and TP15 is what you're suggesting?
Yes.
4 and 15 would move out to 2025.
That's what I would recommend, but again, I'm looking for feedback, so.
I think that would be great. I guess my question on the TP 11 is, we talked a little bit earlier about the specific part of that roadway that does not have the sidewalk on the north side.
So
Is that something that would be done?
So that would not be done. That is a separate sidewalk project.
Yeah.
That would not be done as part of this project because this was preservation funding specifically. So that would be considered an enhancement. We do have that scheduled under the sidewalk and pedestrian projects. That one is Madsen from Mission to Appleway. That is, I'm sorry. Yeah, Madsen Mission to Appleway is out in 2026.
I think we're talking about two different ones. I'm talking about the one that's on the Huntwood property.
The one that's on the Huntwood property.
The section between Meadowwood and the Meadowwood Technology Complex and the Rocky Hill neighborhood, that north side that doesn't have a sidewalk for like 200 feet or something.
Yes, and so that is not on there right now and it could not be part of that.
Okay.
So, but it is something that we could certainly add to the tip.
Okay.
And I don't believe we added it to the capital facilities plan last year.
Right, we didn't.
But again, we could add it to the tip. I will say this about that, and that is that because we do have the pedestrian master plan also planned for next year, that would certainly go into the mix of those places where we have sidewalk gaps. And given that we're talking, it also may be a candidate for safe routes to school.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it makes more sense to do it while the roadway is already dug up and they're doing the overlay.
And again, it's not possible with that funding source.
Yeah.
Councilmember Dunn.
Question, Lisa, specifically on the sidewalks adjacent to Mission, is the improvements, frontage improvements, the responsibility of the adjacent property owner in the event of development?
In the event of development, that is correct.
Are we in receipt of a permit for development on that property?
So we are not on the property that fronts it.
Oh.
On the property behind it. So the property that there is a series of 4 parcels that kind of wrap around the building that was HP headquarters that is now Liberty Launch Academy. And 2 of those parcels are going to be developed as multifamily apartments. That's the notice of application everybody just got. But they're not developing the front parcel and they're not actually even accessing it from how they're accessing it is from the Mission or from the Meadowwood Tech existing driveway.
Okay.
So
I guess I look at it as a schedule event. Eventually that property will develop. And eventually the presentation of the sidewalk will be the responsibility of the developer at that time.
that is absolutely true. That is absolutely true.
Okay.
The only question that and this is the question that we get into when we work on the pedestrian master plan, is whether or not there is a compelling community interest to do it in advance of the development and
timing.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else? Comments? Councilmember Van Orman.
The biggest comment we had talked about before budget season last year was evaluation of all the inventory, all of our arterial and so forth. Have we been working on that, and do we kind of have a one through of what are conditions in there?
So that is the pavement, the pavement master plan. I'll give you a project number. The pavement condition study and preservation master plan, TP 14, that is planned for next year. And then you'll see that in each subsequent year, we have updates to that. So we will be, once we create that database, we'll be maintaining it year after year. That is a 2024 project.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilmember, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem, since you haven't gone yet.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would just say I'm in favor of your proposal, moving TP 4 and 15 to 2025. Thank you.
Anybody else before we go second? Councilmember Solberg.
I want to hear what Dan has to say too. Lisa, thank you for the key or the legend on the second page. You know how much I love your acronyms.
They're not mine.
But I do know that there are only 3 mentions of the funding source coming from our general budget. So I really appreciate staff working on the grants and the TIF, LIFT, TIBs, CWs and all the rest of it. Thank you.
Or before we go back for seconds, let me make sure Councilmember Kurt's got.
I'll just chime in.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would agree with, was it TP 11, moving that up to take advantage of a grant. I like that. I just had one question, and maybe this is gonna come in what, Councilmember Van Orman brought up, but it seems like the condition of the roads, the road on Moulter, south of Mission to Country Vista is in pretty poor condition. Is that something kind of that will be covered in that study?
Yes, so the pavement condition study and master plan is going to look at all of, not just our collectors and arterials, but all of our residential streets as well. And it will create a baseline for roadway conditions, which we will be then assessing annually going forward and updating. So that and that's a super useful tool in that we can then better prioritize. And the roadways that you think are in the worst condition, sometimes a different roadway will blow up well in advance of that. And we've seen this over and over again just in the last 5 years that I've been here. That has been the case in numerous times. So this is a really great, it's a really great opportunity. We will be using our GIS system to create the database. And and by the way, most communities already have that because they have a rule called Gatsby 34, where you have to maintain all of your infrastructure. And you have to actually depreciate. But because we are on a cash basis, not an accrual basis, that rule does not apply to us. So we haven't had that opportunity, but it is a great tool. And in fact, the technology for these pavement condition studies have gotten so good. You see the vehicles driving around with the cameras, and they actually literally record the condition of the roadway. It's pretty slick.
All right, Councilmember Dunn, sorry.
Great. I guess I have an observation of a potential project. If Lisa, you feel that you've covered all the changes to the existing, what you've provided so far?
Yes, sir.
Great. I want to draw attention to the pedestrian section and recognizing our transportation improvement plan as a 6-year event horizon objective. I want to talk about the western portion of our city and specifically Appleway Avenue as it bounds Spokane Valley. I want to recognize the right-of-way previously appointed for some future light rail, which the valley has taken advantage of for what they call the Appleway Trail. The City Valley has finished the Appleway Trail in a 10-foot asphalt up to Barker Road, but not yet taken investment to move east of Barker towards the Liberty Lake City, city boundary. I'd like to consider meeting and joining the valley's objective of a valley Appleway Trail as a 10-foot asphalt as it accompanies Appleway and transitions to Country Vista Drive.
And I think that is a great suggestion. I believe that, and I'm not sure if it's explicitly called out in the descriptions, which I haven't given you yet because I haven't put the packet together yet because I needed to know what it looked like in terms of the timing of these things. But we do call out the fact that is part of the vision for the project for TP. It's listed as TP3 here. And it's actually, the numbering has changed in the final version, but it's for the Country Vista rebuild and operational improvements, which we're doing in 2 phases. We're calling out the fact that we're going to look at least doing a 10-foot wide multimodal from Kramer Parkway west.
Thank you. I recognize this as an important objective for pedestrian actions in our city, and also as the potential for cooperation with the city of the valley to deliver a project that is a benefit to both jurisdictions. So I see it as an opportunity. I don't see it like next year, obviously. I would put it in the 5 to 6 year time window, but to have it established on our plan
would create the opportunity for grants. So I'd be interested.
And I think that that's a great idea. And maybe what we could do is kind of like what we've just done with Apple Way and the Country Vista Boulevard Lane. We could have two separate projects, but note that they're linked and they would occur together. If that would,
I would appreciate that.
sure.
Okay, any other comments? All right, not hearing any. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank
Appreciate it. We'll
you.
see this again. And,
Well, so you will actually be seeing it tomorrow because I have to send out the SEPA tomorrow. So I will be putting
okay,
this
it'll
together.
it'll be back at the next meeting, right?
Yes, we'll be back at the next meeting.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, everybody, we are up to general business with the consent agenda. Mayor Pro Tem, you're up.
Make motion to approve general business consent agenda items 10A and B.
Second.
All right, moving second. Any questions, concerns? All right, not hearing any. All in favor of approving general business consent agenda items A and B, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0.
General business item 11A, make a motion to authorize the first year purchase of 19 flock safety license plate recognition cameras in the amount of $59,622.75.
Second.
And a second by Councilmember Spencer. Any comments, questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think it's worth further discussion about if we have to purchase more to support our HOAs. If you start to think about how many HOAs we have within the city, and how many residents are within those HOAs, if you start adding them up, we have Meadowood HOA, the Legacy Ridge, the River District, the Villages, Stonehill, Truchina, Meadowood Glen, and Meadowood Estates, and I'm sure I've missed some smaller ones. When you look at that on a map, it's quite impressive of how many residents we have in the city that are within an HOA, and I don't think it just doesn't set right with me not to support them with a security feature such as this. So I don't know if it's, I guess I would ask is if you could ask the chief if it requires more or what, but that's just my thoughts. Any response?
Councilmember.
I had one question.
Kurtz.
Is the, how many of the HOA streets are actually private? Because I know that one is, but I don't know if all of them are private.
Yeah, there are several that are private. We could come up, I think Chief and Lieutenant have a list. And say if you like, I can put it on a future workshop to discuss with the council when we get some information from Chief.
That's-
Is that interested? Enough people interested in that?
Okay.
Councilmember Carpio.
Yeah, I think one idea that I would have, I think it's in everyone's interest to have more of these. So perhaps an incentive that we could offer to the HOAs is that the city will match for everyone that the HOA purchases. And then that way, perhaps we could have just extended each and every year and then, the list that Phil brought up, perhaps one year it's 6 and then next year it's 12, and then we just continue to add on to it.
Well, I'll put this on for a future workshop, given the feedback here. So if there's no more comments or questions on the item that was motioned. Here, Councilmember Van Orman.
One more question, and that would be, we would really need to do a really good informational to the public. Because most people see this as being Big Brother.
Right. Again,
And,
we'll put that on the workshop. We're looking for a discussion and vote on this motioned topic to approve the contract.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on this item? You're not hearing any. All in favor of authorizing the first year purchase of 19 flock safety license plate recognition cameras, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0.
General business item 11B, make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the proposal from Aero Concrete for Pavilion Park basketball court resurfacing in the amount of $30,018.07.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Solberg. Any questions or comments? Not seeing or hearing any. All in favor of approving the proposal from Aero Concrete, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0.
General business item 11C, make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the Danielle Davis artist agreement and expenditure in the amount of $16,000 plus applicable sales tax.
Second.
Thank you. We have a second from Councilmember Cargill. Any questions or comments on this one? Not seeing any. All in favor of authorizing the artist agreement with Danielle Davis, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
General business item 11D, make a motion to confirm the mayor's appointment of Charlie Jenks as an adjunct member of the planning commission.
Let me see if he was able to join us. So, Lisa.
Mayor, council, Mr. Jenks sends his apologies. He was flying back from Honolulu and he got stuck in the San Francisco airport. And so his flight was delayed. He will not be back into town, he said, until 9:30-ish. So he apologizes. He did offer that if you would prefer to defer until the next meeting, that he'd be more than happy to come to the next meeting.
I would
Councilmember Van
recommend
Orman?
that we defer it so we get a chance to meet him.
Okay, so how do we handle that? One, Because we had a motion that, oh, no, we didn't. We didn't have a motion, so. So the motion to defer item 11D to the next meeting.
did make a motion.
Oh, did you? I didn't write it
Yeah,
down.
you
Sorry.
could make a secondary motion to table it, even though there's a motion on the table relative to moving to the next meeting. So if you want to do that, you could take that motion for the next meeting. So June 20th.
Okay, so we have a motion.
That we table the appointment of the adjunct member of Charlie Jenks until our next meeting.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second, Councilmember Spencer. All right, those in favor of tabling item 11D to the next meeting on June 20th? The right date? Yes. Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0. So we will go ahead and move that to the next agenda. Thank you. All right, council comments. Anything besides upcoming workshops that anybody would like to follow up on? Mayor
Yes.
Pro Tem.
Mayor, thank you. Since I was one of the four that voted in our May 2nd action item 11B to approve parametrics task order in an amount not to exceed $37,000 to design and bid the repair of Mission Avenue from just east of Kramer Parkway roundabout to just west of Cornerstone, and authorize the mayor to execute the contract. After further discussion with the developer, I think it certainly warrants a little more discussion from this body. I'm one of the four that voted in favor of it, and with the information I've been given, basically regarding around the reimbursement from TIF, I just feel like there's muddy waters ahead, and I don't necessarily want my approval on that motion, knowing what I know now. So I would ask that we pause the action, any further action with parametrics, and allow further dialogue with the developer, the city, and a third-party evaluator.
All right, so do you mind if, Lisa, can I put you on the spot? And I know I'd asked you this question earlier, so I know you got the answer. Where are we in that process?
So we are somewhere at about 50% or more design. They are anticipating having the design completed by the design and bid specs completed by the end of the month. I think we're expecting like a 70% design from them by the end of this week or the beginning of next for an internal review. They have invested probably the bulk of the money already in the design process. We have information based upon that of additional things that were not constructed per plan, but, and so we have some additional adjustments that they will be recommending. They will hit because they'll be at 100% design by June 30th. I think that we could, if this council would like to have parametrics come back and share with you what they found in the survey and design and what their proposed solutions are. I think we could have parametrics come back to this council meeting on June 20th. And again, I do also, I want to make certain that council also is clear on the tip and lift reimbursement process, because I do understand that there has been some misstatements about how that works. So we could also be prepared to again
Well,
discuss that in.
I
more
may be
detail.
wrong, but they're only gonna pay to one party or the other, not both.
So
Is that a fair statement?
that is a fair statement. Now let me explain on the west side or on the east side. The east side, the portion that we're doing, we are not accepting that right of way. We're not proposing to accept that right of way until the repairs are done. We will submit and we will take into consideration their expenses. And we will do an accounting as to the portions of that we were able to reuse versus that which we could not reuse. Again, given where parametrics is in the design, I think that it would be a fair and reasonable request to the city council to have them come back and to let you know what they found and what they're recommending in terms of the repairs. And I think that might give you maybe a clearer picture of the problems that we encountered as they did a detailed survey of it to define the repairs. And I think that may clarify things for you. But at the end of the day, they're going to, the county is only going to reimburse for the cost of the accepted project. So any work that was done that has to be moved will not be reimbursed.
So we don't have anything that I know of on the 6 o'clock workshop agenda on the 20th. Would it be just a nice nods or comments to have them, let's have that workshop on the 20th so we can go through more detail? I think Councilmember Solberg and then Councilmember Kurtz.
Yeah, I agree. I'm one of the four as well as Phil is, and I would like to hear from parametrics. I'd like to have a report give us more information. What we've heard is from two very distinct sides, and parametrics should be objective in their presentation.
Councilmember Kurtz.
I do want to hear a presentation, and one of the things I was going to bring up in comments too was the 20th is the kickoff for the AWC
Oh,
event,
that's
and I don't
right.
know how many people are attending that. So I would like to be in both places.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm planning on going because it's a good chance for me to meet with their CEO and the president and incoming president. It's a reception that first night, so that'd be up to Councilmember Spencer and yourself. And I think Mark, I think you said you're gonna be here for the meeting while I
I'll
go
be
to
at the
that.
council meeting, yes.
But I did not have planned to be there that evening on the 20th, so I'm fine either way.
Okay, all right, so we'll put this on the 6 o'clock workshop on the 20th, it sounds like. Any opposed?
To discuss exactly what?
Well, to have parametrics give an update on where they are, give a full, well, Go
So
ahead,
what I would
Lisa.
suggest, and tell me if this is what you're hoping for. What I would suggest is that parametrics can do a review of what was constructed, what is outside of our standards, what they're recommending in terms of the repair process, and what that means in terms of what portions of the infrastructure could be reused versus those which will be demolished
That sounds fair.
or removed.
So question, they said, now Pyrometrics is basically our third-party engineering firm.
That is correct.
Okay. So I would be in favor of hearing about that.
Thank you.
okay? So we'll make that note for 6 o'clock at the next meeting.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, any other council comments? Not hearing any.
Mayor.
Yes. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Kurtz, go ahead.
July 4th is a holiday and it's our next meeting. I'm wondering how we want to handle the meeting.
Wait, we're not all gonna be here instead of at Pavilion Park?
Let's
Take a look at the meeting.
Let's see who's gonna be here before we cancel a meeting in April. We got bogged down with one of our 11 o'clock meetings by canceling it.
Well, I was looking at gonna look at the calendar
Do a
here,
different
so,
day.
We could change it to another day. That's
yeah, so I guess you guys could make a motion to move the first meeting to the 11th. And then we would have one, two weeks in a row on the 11th and the 18th. Councilmember Dunn.
Madam Mayor, I move that we move the regularly scheduled July 4th meeting to the 11th.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Spencer. Any further comments, questions? All right, not hearing any. All in favor of moving the July 4th meeting to the 13th? sorry, to the eleventh, wrong calendar. Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One opposed, Councilmember Cargill dissenting. All right, looks like we have moved our July 4th to the 11th. Thank you for bringing that up. I would have forgotten. All right, any other council comments while we're at it? Okay, on to public hearings and appeals. We don't have any. Next up is resolutions. We have resolution number 23-246. Go ahead, Kelsey.
A resolution of the City of Liberty Lake, Washington, waiving building permit fees and Harvard Road mitigation fees for the Hub Sports Center expansion.
Okay, so I know Phil's here. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to say. I know you did a great presentation at the last meeting. The action item in the agenda bills estimates of what 135,000-ish for those fees. So I guess we have, if I could have a motion and a second for the resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 23-246.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember, second by Councilmember Dunn. Before we go to a vote, we do have an opportunity for public comments before we take a vote on resolutions. Is there anybody in the chambers or online who'd like to make a comment on resolution 23-246? Jump back to Zoom here to make sure it's. Uh-oh. Todd, is there anybody online? Okay, all right, not hearing any. All in favor of approve? Oh, go ahead, sorry. Thanks for piping up.
Before we go ahead and take a vote, as we deal with anything, I'm looking to our attorney, is this a gifting of public funds doing this?
No, I think we're fine here.
Okay. All in favor of approving resolution 23-246, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes 7-0. Okay, we are on to ordinances. We have 2 second reads tonight. First one is for ordinance 293. Kelsey.
Ordinance number 293, an ordinance of the City of Liberty Lake, Washington, amending the City of Liberty Lake Development Code and the Development Code contained in the River District Specific Area Plan.
Okay. Is there anybody, I know Lisa has some kind of a repeat of what we've talked about before, this ordinance in the packet. Is there any questions, further questions for her on the suggested changes? Councilmember Van Orman.
I understand about the building heights. I am a little concerned about the RV storage. And it being fully enclosed like the one off of Market. Are we tall enough?
So we looked at that. I believe that we are. I believe that this is consistent with what has been done in other locations. It's realistic. We heard from a potential developer that it was also, we were trying to balance you don't want to create regulations that make it wholly prohibitive of actually accomplishing it. And again, if you look at what's been done in Airway Heights, what's been done on Market Street, what's been done in some of the other locations, this is pretty consistent. We did a lot of research in terms of the design standards, and I feel that they are pretty protected. Keep in mind also that not only do you have the walls and the fences, all the RV storage has to be under cover also. And so that's going to help with that.
Aesthetics look amazing. On Market, it looks really, really good. I just wanted to make sure with the height of our RVs that that's what we're aiming for, is aesthetics.
Yes. All right, Councilmember Forward, Mayor Pro Tem Foyer has a
Thank you.
question.
Just a comment, after our first read, I took some time and I looked to see how much of our city is covered in C2, and it's a very small sliver. And it's all up against the freeway. And that property that is in that zoning area, it's prime property, but probably not for storage. So my question is somebody requested this?
So yes, so this was actually requested, this was originally initiated by the mayor. It related to a business that was interested in this. The planning commission spent a lot of time on this.
I'm sure.
They determined that this was the ideal area and there actually is a property owner in this zone. They had identified the zone before the property owner came forward and said, yeah, I'm thinking about doing this. So we do have a property owner who, by the way, had developed the storage on Market Street and in Airway Heights also. So was able to, he was able to give a very informed opinion on some of the things that the details of the design standards that the planning commission was really digging into.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Dunn.
Yeah, regarding the additions to the development code for building height amendment, I do actually have concern for life safety for the height potential of buildings erected by removing the height standard. I recognize further, there's significant amounts of land that are in significantly sloped properties where removing any measure to the height of the building, to me creates not a good situation. Not in favor of Exhibit A, I am in favor of Exhibit B contained within the ordinance. Madam Mayor, I'd like to move that we remand to Planning Commission Exhibit A as a portion of Ordinance 293.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I'll make sure I'm following this right for a second read, Sean. So a motion and a second to move the building height portion.
Correct,
to-
remand to the Planning Commission for
back to Planning Commission.
reconsideration. The building heights amendment portion of the ordinance.
Okay. Any questions or discussion on that?
Yeah, I'll comment on that. If you look on the hill up here, that's the slope that you're dealing with. That's the most steepest slope probably anywhere within the city at this stage of the game. Most of it's built out up there. There's maybe 20 lots left to build, and those are all mostly on uphill lots. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 that are on the downhill. If you look up there, it's just not cost prohibitive to do anything more than a 2-story on the front, as the planning commission has identified. That's where they would measure. Because the slope is so steep, you're going to be, it's just cost prohibitive to get any taller in the front. Why in the world would you ever have a 3-story front, even if you could meet the maximum height requirement and still have 12 or a 15-foot base or sub on the backside of the lot just because you're trying to catch up with topography? No, it's cost prohibitive. So if you look up on the hill, most everybody does a rancher with a basement because the terrain allows for that naturally. Some of them have basements with 2 stories, but that's about the max I think I've ever seen anywhere up there. So for me, as a home builder, this cleans up how to measure the height of a building from the front. And if you want to, if we had property, which we don't, over on the lake where it's straight up and down, that then maybe what you're referring to would apply, but I just don't see that we have terrain like that within the city. I'm going to vote against it only because I value the planning commission's efforts in trying to clean this up.
Councilmember Dunn.
Only as observation, cost prohibitive in today's dollars. The value of real estate is not going down. And I want to try and say our ordinances are equipped to handle the 10 and the 25 and 50 year revision of our city. So, thanks.
All right, any other comments on the motion to remand the height measurement change back to planning commission? All right, not hearing any. All in favor of remanding the height issue back to planning commission, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all in favor, any opposed?
No.
3, okay. It's like the nays have it. Motion fails. Okay, all right, so we're back to the full ordinance, which we have. Okay, sorry, so make sure we don't have any other questions or concerns on the full ordinance at this point. Councilmember Cargill.
Mayor, can I make a motion to separate these? And do a vote on number 1 and a vote on 2 separately?
You can make any motion you'd like. Do we have a second to the motion of separating the 2 items in this ordinance for separate votes? Second. Okay. All All right, any discussion, questions on that motion?
Yeah, I have a question. Would it still fall under the same ordinance number?
Yeah,
I'm not following.
so the question is to
If we're gonna
separate the two changes into separate votes.
There were two parts to the proposed building height and the RV storage.
Under the
And we
exhibits.
talked about this in the last meeting, separating them out.
So if the council in the end decides to approve one and not the other,
So I,
It falls under one ordinance. That's
Right.
my point.
Yes.
so right now you have exhibit A, and exhibit B. You tried to just remove exhibit A, which failed. So now you're back to A and B.
No.
So where do we go from
Things
there?
failed, yeah.
The motion was just to remove an exhibit from the ordinance.
And
That was
goes
what you
back to
just
the
voted
planning
on.
commission.
and that failed.
And that one
And that
failed.
failed.
That was to send it back to the planning commission.
Right.
Yes.
To
This is
send,
just
to
a
pull it out.
We
send
still
back.
have both of them at this point.
Correct.
And what Chris's motion is to separate them and vote on them separately, which we talked about at the last meeting.
And if one fails, then we just strike that part of the
Right.
ordinance, correct? Is that how it would be, Sean?
Well, I'm trying to think, because the ordinance, it's, yes, what you're saying, Mayor, is correct. The ordinance right now refers to the exhibits and incorporated in the overall ordinance. So I think what Phil's going would be the same number. Ultimately, yes, because it's still relative to the same topic. But I'm trying to see how. I guess you could vote to approve exhibit A or exhibit B individually and then take the ordinance as a whole relative to the A and B vote that you had.
I think that's what I'm
Is that
hearing
the
the
intent,
intent
Chris?
is.
My main intent is making it so that those of us who are in favor of one part don't have to vote against the entire thing.
Right, so that's what I'm saying is you could make an motion to approve the ordinance with exhibit A. You could make a motion to approve the ordinance with exhibit B and vote on those individually.
Yeah.
And then whatever the outcome is on A and B, then just for example, if they're both approved to be
Right.
included, then you'd vote on the entire ordinance with A and B.
Yeah, I mean, at least like puts us on the record, I guess. but
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure that the ordinance is consistent with what it reads and the change in the event A or B is removed.
Right.
There's no questions on that. We'll go
Got a
ahead.
question. Would
Yes,
it,
go ahead.
would it be better if we made a motion to have them separated as separate ordinances and take a look at it at a later date? Would that be easier for Sean's purposes to make sure everything?
You could do that, and I suppose it would happen if it would do it, but I would say for purpose of tonight, it would just be a question of removing one of them. And then revising the overall ordinance to remove the language to the reference to which exhibit is that would be removed. So ultimately it would come back to what you're saying, but for purposes tonight, it's just vote on whether you want one or both in. And if one of them is removed, we would revise the text of the ordinance to reflect that there's only one exhibit and not two.
Any other questions?
So I need to withdraw my motion then
Okay,
and instead move that. Or do I?
No, I think he's 1 and 2. I was just not quite sure exactly how you're going with it. So I think we could have a motion where the council votes if they want to take them separately.
that's
And
what
then
this
to the
is.
extent you want to do that, then you would make a motion, 1 to remove
Right.
a motion to remove B. So you'd have
You two, you
essentially 3
approve-
votes
approve
right now.
or
Right, okay.
Approve A or B.
Okay.
We're not voting in the negative.
No, it would be, right. So this one is just to have
Yeah.
a vote
Separate.
on the separation of the
Yeah.
two.
Okay,
Exactly.
so the motion still stands.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, so,
Jen, did you say-
all in favor of
Did you s-
pulling the two exhibits out to be voted on separately, please say aye.
Let me- hang
What?
on.
What?
Did someone second?
I second,
Kelsey?
yeah, yes,
And yes,
Curtis,
okay,
yep.
all right, I just want to make sure.
No?
Sorry,
All
Mary.
right, that's okay. All in favor of approving the motion to vote on the two exhibits separately, please say aye. Aye. I didn't bring my check sheet again. Okay, any opposed? Okay, motion passes, so we will be voting on those separately. All right, Kelsey, did you get the votes?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure that, okay, so I didn't print it out, which exhibit is which, so make.
Building heights.
A, okay, all right, so first one on the list is the Building Heights Exhibit A. Do we have a motion to approve the Building Heights exhibit?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion, further discussion on the Building Heights portion of this ordinance? Okay, I'm not seeing any or hearing any. All right, all in favor of approving Exhibit A, the Building Heights portion of ordinance 293, please say aye. Hold your hands up high and keep them up.
Aye.
Okay, those opposed? All right, ayes have it, 5-2. Motion passes. We will be, so the Exhibit A regarding heights is approved. All right, next we have the vote on Exhibit B with regards to the mini storage. It's hard to write and talk at the same time. We have
I'll make a motion to approve Exhibit B.
Okay, we have a second. Second by Councilmember Dunn. All right, any further discussion on Exhibit B with regards to the mini storage? Go ahead,
I'd just
Councilman
like to
Spencer.
hear the council's opinion on, for or against on this issue. If there's any opinions.
Councilmember Solberg.
I'm gonna trust the planning commission's extensive discussion on it and agree with them. I think it's gonna be, I don't know whether it's gonna be like market, but I think that they've done their due diligence to present it to us. And I support it.
All right, any other comments?
Sure, I'll speak to it.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm gonna vote in favor of it simply because it's such a small portion of the zoning within the city. And two, over the years, there has been a desire for some storage within the city limits. And if it can be done in an eloquent manner, then I'm all for it.
Thank you. Councilmember Spencer.
Yeah, I would just add, personally, from the presentation and all the extensive work that the planning commission did put into this, it appears like that it's gonna fit in with Liberty Lake, so.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Van Orman.
One more conversation, and that is, we need more RV storage and to have it aesthetically pleasing to the eye. Yay,
And it's not in the residential neighborhoods, which is what has been proposed before.
exactly.
All right. Okay, if there's no more comments, I'll go ahead and take the vote on approval of Exhibit B with regards to mini storage. All in favor of approving mini storage exhibit, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Don't see any. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, now we are back to the full ordinance since both exhibits were approved. All right. Yeah, I haven't gotten it quite yet. Okay, I just want to make sure we had our motion and second on the overall ordinance. Correct, Kelsey? So make sure it got the. Okay. All right, any citizen comments on 15A? With regards to our mini storage and building heights? Anybody?
Sorry, I'm not certain we had a motion and second.
I
I'm reading.
got the motion, but I don't think I
Okay.
didn't have a second. So can we try that again?
Who made the motion?
I thought I had your initials down here, but I've been writing a lot.
Yeah, I
Go
don't
ahead and
think I
start
did, but I
over.
will. I'll make a
All right.
motion to approve second read ordinance number 293.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Spencer.
Do we
Thank
need
you.
to do public comment?
I was getting there. All right, do we have any public comments either here in chambers or on Zoom with regards to passage of ordinance 293? Not seeing any. I don't see anything from Todd, so we'll go ahead to the council for vote. Those in favor of approving ordinance 293, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion passes 6-1. Got everything, Kelsey? Okay, great. We're on to ordinance 115C.
Ordinance number 115C, an ordinance of the city of Liberty Lake, Washington, adding chapter 9 to title 8 of the Liberty Lake Municipal Code related to unlawful camping and storage of personal property on public property, and amending sections 8-1A-2 and 8-1A-5 of the Liberty Lake Municipal Code for consistency therein.
Move to approve.
All right.
Second.
first and second by Councilmember Solberg, and that's when we're done. Any comments or questions on ordinance 115C? I know we've got a citizen comment waiting, but we'll go to the council first. Anybody? All right. I do want to thank the committee that was involved with this. I know it was a lot of work, and thank you, Mark, and Chief for doing all your hard work on this as well. So before we go to a vote, I will go ahead, and we have Nicolette Ochultree. I hope I didn't butcher your name too bad.
It's okay. Thank you. My name is Nicolette Ochultree. Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. I just wanted to invite you to a meeting that will occur on June 28th at the Spokane Convention Center, or the Spokane Regional Collaborative group that has been working on a collaborative effort and series of recommendations. Will be meeting and giving their recommendations for a series of recommendations, like to multiple municipalities here in this region, to talk about a regional effort on homelessness. I also encourage you, in every capacity that you can, like to possibly consider the idea of having a conversation about this regional effort to address homelessness, so that we can be more collaborative in our efforts. I'm originally from Spokane, and I was homeless about 25 years ago. And I went on to get my PhD in philosophy at Columbia University. I was not a lost cause when I was a person experiencing homelessness in this region. And I was hunted by serial killers while I was experiencing homelessness in this region. And I went through a tumultuous situation. And I would urge you to relook at your approach to what it means to be a regional collaborative participant in this effort. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. And it looks like we might have one here in Chambers as well. All right, Kim Schmidt.
Hello, Kim Schmidt, and I do live in Liberty Lake. Just wanted to bring up, I guess, maybe some comments / rhetorical questions. I know we can't do back and forth, just some food for thought. So I have the first page of ordinance 115C here. It says, whereas the city endeavors to compassionately assist individuals assisting homelessness find adequate and appropriate shelter. What I want to know is, what does compassionately assist individuals experiencing homelessness look like? I know that in Liberty Lake, we do not have any shelters or service providers here. I know I have spent 3 years working in Liberty Lake at a business where it kind of attracted houseless people because we're a spot where you can come in and chill out and mostly be left alone. And I have seen some of our officers moving people along in a not so compassionately way here in the city of Liberty Lake. So I want to know what that's going to look like. I think part of this, a public education campaign would be very beneficial. There are some tools online, like if you go to, it's the Shelter Me Spokane website that has the dashboard and, database for who has beds available, which it's notoriously not updated.
Yeah.
But they do have, links to like this pocketbook, which now has the appropriate addresses for these facilities on it, because that was an issue too. I think you're coming to realize that maybe a regional approach is lacking in many ways also. The other section I wanted to talk about real quick, or maybe the other question I had, sorry, I'm slightly unorganized, but regarding section 8-9-7, entitled Enforcement Suspended, will consideration be taken when assessing or not, whether or not beds are available? What some of those concessions might be. Is it an individual person? Do they have kids? Is it, maybe a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife type situation? Because that's very dependent on what type of shelter they'll get moved to. Right now on the Shelter Me Spokane, the only shelter that has more than 25% availability right now, and this is usually really a busy time for people to be checking in, is a young adult shelter. So how does that fit for somebody who maybe has some medical problems? Or, a lot of times families get split up in these shelters. And also, I think that the penalty of $1,000 or 90 days in jail of, if you violate this ordinance, it's an astronomical fine, which some would not be able to pay. For someone looking to get off the streets, a 90-day jail sentence will have serious and long-term impacts on their ability to do things like seek employment, show up to an existing job, fulfill requirements for housing, seen as some might already be in the process of getting housing, which is a long process. And I see I'm already out of time, or did it never
Oh,
start?
sorry. Yeah, no, it started and I was watching you and not the clock. So thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate
just
your
things to think
comments.
about. Thank you.
Yeah, since this is an ordinance, I know we're usually not doing back and forth, but Mark, would you like to address, or Chief, would you like to address any of the concerns that either of our commenters brought up?
Yeah, so I'd like to invite the chief up to talk about some of the issues that they deal with on a day-to-day basis as they're actually going around and encountering folks that are in Liberty Lake that are experiencing homelessness. But just in general, the task force, the working group that put this together recognizes that the city itself has limited resources to deal with this. And so the regional approach, which is identified in the ordinance, is something that we're going to have to pay more attention to. And as this evolves, possibly evolve with it. So.
Okay, yeah, there was kind of a lot, so I hope I can answer your questions. And if I forget something, let me know. I'll start with the compassion part of it. I think that we do operate with compassion fully when we deal with the homeless and the trans individuals that we have coming in through the city, and the ones that we have that are, I'm going to say residents, because they are, and they're here for a reason. We take a lot of steps to help people. We carry bus passes. We get those for free. We hand those out. We try to get them to, it may not be a shelter, but to a relative or any other location. We work with a lot of individuals. We work with a lot of people to try to get them in the best position that we can. And to be honest, there's quite a few people out here that come out here that are homeless because this is the best place for them. They feel safe here. And if you ask them, they will tell you that we treat them a lot better than a lot of other law enforcement agencies around here. There's a couple individuals that I stop and talk to all the time. I know their entire life story. I've showed Mark and the mayor videos that I've contacted them. I've asked them, hey, how can we help you? You know, where did things go wrong? So we're really taking steps to, at least in our community and regionally, to try to help. The other flip side of that is not everyone can be saved, and there are bad people out there, unfortunately. And so sometimes we deal with people that the community's best interest is not in their mind. And sometimes we have to take enforcement action. And so maybe, I don't know, maybe you've seen an example of that and you didn't know everything that was going on, but I can tell you if we are making an arrest or we're stern with someone, it's for a reason. We're not doing it because we're being mean. The bed space, we have to take what we get. And that's one of the reasons why we carry the bus passes. That's one of the reasons why we are finding some alternative places where people are safe, where they have amenities such as grocery stores and gas stations if they don't want to be here in Liberty Lake. But one of the biggest things that we've seen, and I just saw this yesterday, is I don't want you to help me. And I can't make someone who doesn't want to get help. And we see that often. We contact them, are you okay? I'm checking on you, it's hot. You're overdressed. They don't want any help. And that's a personal choice. So there's a lot of variables that we're dealing with. And each situation we have to take individually when considering what actions to take.
Thanks, Chief. Okay, Councilmember Solberg.
But just in general comments, I won't be specific to them, but both of our commentators hit on what the committee did every single time that we met, with probably well over 50 years experience, current and past, with homelessness. And everyone who's been there or in our group has been a part of every homelessness symposium and meeting and group. And so we were as attuned to the situation as we could be, understanding that we didn't have the resources here in Liberty Lake to be able to resolve them. So we fully articulated in the ordinance that we intend to be collaborative with the county, with our neighbors. And that included a strong emphasis on Post Falls and Idaho, who our Liberty Lake Police Department run into a lot, so.
Right, thank you for that. Chief.
Mayor, I just want to add to Councilmember Salberg's comment. We meet regularly with Post Falls and we do discuss our homeless issues with their chief and their captain over there. So it is not only a regional, Spokane regional effort, but also communicating with our neighbors to see what we can do.
Right, thank you. Any other comments or questions from the council?
I'd just
Councilmember Spencer.
like to thank the chief for the explanation about how our law enforcement is interacting with the individuals experiencing homelessness in our community. And I'm grateful for the example from the top down.
Right, thank you. Anybody else? All right, not seeing any. Go ahead and go to a vote on ordinance 115C. All in favor of approving ordinance 115C, please say aye. What? Yeah, we had a motion by Tom and second by Councilmember Dunn.
Sorry.
That's okay. All right, all in favor of approving 115C, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any. Motion passes 7-0. Okay. All right, that brings us to C, reconsideration for the mayor's veto of ordinance 119C, and I'm not quite sure how to introduce this, Sean. Obviously, we've never been through this, so. hoping
Sure.
you can guide
So
us.
there's specific statutory provisions relative to mayor vetoes of an ordinance under 35A 12, 100 and 130. So part of the process is that the shall language in the statute that requires a reconsideration. It's not the reconsideration that you would normally see in the sense of I voted in favor of this, so therefore we'll bring it back. In this situation, the ordinance passed by the council and then was considered by the mayor for signature. All ordinances require that the mayor signs them in order for them to be valid. In the event that in this case, Mayor Kaminskas did not sign it, the lack of a signature will still, under the statute, allow it to go into effect 10 days later. So the option is either if you don't sign it or don't veto it, it would become effective at that point in time. In this case, with a veto, the statute then provides that the council can reconsider the veto and override that veto by a majority +1 of all council members. So in this case, with 7 council members, that would be 5. So if the motion to override the mayor's veto is voted upon with a motion and a second, and 5 council members vote in favor of it, the mayor's veto would be would override the mayor's veto, and once published, the ordinance would go into effect. So at this point, it's up to the council whether they want to make a motion to override the mayor's veto, have a second, and then accordingly have a vote.
Well, I don't want to assume anything, so I'll make a motion to override the mayor's veto.
We have a second.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Cargill. All right, discussion? Councilmember Van Orman.
I guess I need some clarity, especially from being here from the very beginning. We are underneath RCW 35A. We're a municipal library in a code city that gives the governing body to the city council. There's a disconnect here. We have an advisory library board of trustees. We have not given that over to them.
It was in that in 119 since it began.
No.
Somebody approved 119 starting back in 2003 that gave the library board authority over policy.
Not over policy.
That's what
That
it
is
says.
to set
That's
up
what it
the
says.
library. The policy making is with the library, with the Liberty
That's
Lake
not what
City
it
Council.
says.
I guess, is there a question that you're asking me
Well, the
specifically
question
or?
would be, that hasn't changed with the Attorney General. The Attorney General has not weighed in on that. So where are we coming that we've got the Board of Trustees that is autonomous?
Well, the authority of the Board of Trustees is based upon the originating ordinance. And so whatever the council at a previous council has put forth in an ordinance that was approved, that's the delegation of authority for the library and the Board of Trustees to act. This particular situation was to change that authority, of which the council voted to pass, the mayor is vetoed. And so at this point, it's just a question of whether or not the council wants to override that or not. That doesn't mean that the council can't have further discussions about something different about the ordinance. It's just with relation, in relation to this particular ordinance.
So 119, as it currently sits, wouldn't change, whether we voted on it or not.
So to the extent of 119B and A relative to the originating ordinances, to the extent of how those all apply together, yes, those would stay in place. The only thing that would not apply would be 119C.
Anybody else have any more conversation on that?
Anybody else have any comments? Councilmember Cargill.
Thank you. I think we all know that this is likely not to be overturned. And as a result, we're going to have a rogue city department, in my opinion, that's not really accountable to anyone. And to me, that's the issue. I've had a chance to review a lot of vetoes as part of my day job, and I think this is probably one of the worst ones I've read. I don't say that because of the action of the veto itself, but rather what happened before and the language in the veto. The executive branch says that the ordinance change didn't align with the wording in the library collection policy, but it's this council that sets the legislative policy of this city, not the executive branch, not the library board, not any other board or commission. The council, no matter who is on it, sets the policy. And the departments are tasked with implementing that policy, not the other way around. We have no responsibility to align city policy with what the library collection policy happens to be at any given time. And the power in our city is with the people via their elected representatives. The executive branch says that the ordinance didn't take into account citizen feedback. And that's a little strange to me because we sat here for 7 months getting feedback. Much of the language that's contained in the ordinance directly reflects the comments, not only of the library board, but also of citizens. The executive branch claims that the 4 council members who voted for this ordinance are just not educated enough. We don't have enough elected experience. And you know what? Guilty as charged. I haven't, and I never will spend a lifetime in city government and deny others the opportunity to serve. We are a body that's supposed to be made up of citizens who come and go. But apparently the only way we're allowed to make changes to policy is if we come and stay. I'd sure like to know what other issues on which I'm not allowed to make a judgment. Can we point to a specific law that's in our city or our state that says only council members who have served a certain period of time get to vote or have a say in major issues? That to me is perhaps the most absurd part of this veto. And I would hope that every independent-minded citizen and the legislative branch would reject that, no matter who is on this council. I think it's a very, very dangerous precedent to set. We all know that the executive branch has the authority to veto, but I think it's kind of ironic that we are seeing the executive branch prevent the legislative branch in this case from exercising its oversight responsibilities. One of the unique parts of our government here in Liberty Lake is that even though we have a strong mayor, that mayor is still part of the legislative branch, still sits at this table, runs the meetings. He or she can influence the council in ways most other strong mayors cannot. And our executive had the opportunity to offer comments, suggestions, was in fact very much involved in the discussion, going so far as to suggest wording changes. But there was never ever mention of a potential veto until after the vote was taken. My perspective is that government in the dark is never a good thing. I can't imagine why we would be so afraid of an extra form of transparency and oversight especially when it accomplishes the very thing that we were told was so important, and that is preventing the council from banning books. It should be noted that there are only 2 folks now on the record that are opposed to the language in this ordinance that says the council cannot ban books. It should also be known that the first ever veto in the history of the city of Liberty Lake was directly aimed at the legislative branch and preventing it from exercising oversight responsibilities. The council is the legislative body of the city. Ultimately, our form of government, it depends on these decisions being put in the hands of those who are closest to the people, those who are directly accountable to the people at the ballot box. And I've heard the refrain from those on this dais that we need to get back to Liberty Lake together, and I appreciate that sentiment. But I have to tell you, I have a hard time accepting that admonition in the face of silence and even chuckles while we had folks come in from outside of the community, stand here at this podium, call council members or compare council members to Nazis, terrorists, extremists, communists. Some of us had our religion questioned. I was told to move out of the city.
I had
No comments calling that inappropriate. No mention of that in this executive veto. Just language saying that we didn't listen hard enough. Seems to me that the only recourse we now have is to dismiss some of the library board members. I certainly thought the scalpel approach was better than that type of sledgehammer, but I guess here we are. And some of the other commitments I'm making here tonight, until we have more oversight, including the library, I'm not going to be voting to approve any more executive branch appointments. Until we have more oversight, I will not be voting to approve any budget requests that come from the library. And until we have more oversight, I will be very skeptical of any proposals that come from the executive branch. And I wish I didn't have to take these steps, but I think a major trust has been broken. And I'll just finish with what one citizen wrote us in an email yesterday, who told us that they spoke to many residents who wanted to come and attend these meetings and speak up. And the consensus was that they were scared of the backlash. We shouldn't have to live in the city where a very loud group scares other citizens out of coming and speaking their mind. And so that's where my position is on this. And I would hope that for the sake of the power of the legislative branch, that we would override this veto. Thank you.
Right. Any other comments?
Sure.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I have a prepared statement as well. The statements in the veto letter from the mayor make it very clear that some on the council are simply not qualified to make these types of decisions due to professional and educational experience. I find this comment extremely insulting to the 4 council members. Is that the approach we should consider when you make a decision for the city, given your time as mayor is about the same as mine as a city council member? A statement was added to the ordinance saying that the council or the mayor would not ban books by a vote of 6-1. Apparently that was not acceptable. Or maybe that wasn't the real issue after all. I stand by my comments in recent meetings. The city council is the legislative body with the duty to approve or deny all ordinances, resolutions, and policies for all the departments per RCW 35. Mayor has told me several times, and I respect this, no response is a sign of acceptance. Regarding many other topics discussed over the last couple of years, I've been involved in many discussions regarding the ordinance with council members, board of trustees members, and city staff. Not one time did the mayor reach out to me with any suggestions or comments one-on-one as identified in the veto letter. As you can imagine, I was a bit dumbfounded by the veto, but more so by the rationale used to justify the veto. I'm concerned for the future of how the council and the mayor interact going forward with this new precedent and how long it may take to regain the professional respect we all once shared. I'd also like to address one last topic. Some suggesting that the 4 council members in favor of this ordinance are against the library. That is simply not correct. That is not true. Nobody I've ever heard say they are against the library. I'd ask that it stop immediately. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilmember Spencer.
Yeah, I don't have specific prepared comments, but I did just want to touch on a few of the points made in this veto letter. starting in the first sentence regarding the idea that this was a short-sighted versus a long-term solution. I think, I feel like the reason why we took up this action and started the process of updating this ordinance was for a long-term solution. We had a situation last year with the library board deciding to go ahead and update the collection development policy without having a conversation with us. They stated in their report that they had taken into consideration our opinions, but decided ultimately never to have that conversation. So I felt like this was actually a long-term solution rather than short-sighted. Moving to the second paragraph regarding the idea that we would need to, Councilmember Cargill touched on this, that we would need to align the ordinance with policy. To me, that's nonsense. The policy is going to follow the ordinance. So however the legislative body chooses to word the ordinance, the policy would then need to follow. Let's see, Councilmember Cargill and Mayor Pro Tem also touched on these, at least on this point. I feel like this veto sets two very dangerous precedents. One, again, it's already been brought up, this idea that the amount of time that you have serving on the council, that we would have a litmus test for what decisions we are able to weigh in on and make. I think that's a very dangerous precedent to set. The other point that I would like to make is towards the end, the comment that said what disappoints me most about the last 7 months is the lack of regard for citizen input. And then talking about how, you know, there were likely many people who were commenting outside of the city. I think this is the other, first of all, talking about the things that we did add to the ordinance. We added language regarding the fact that we wouldn't ban books, that we would be adding a council liaison to the library board meetings. We updated the language to 2023 regarding technology and whatnot. We added quarterly reports. We even added the language to align the library board's annual report with the state report that Jandy has to file. So I feel like to state that we didn't listen to the public and to the library board, all of those things were actually brought forward by the library board. The other dangerous precedent with this statement regarding listening to the citizens is, first of all, we don't operate by a caucus in our city. There have been comments coming in from individuals who have supported the actions of the majority of the council, stating that, you know, they don't have time to show up and weigh in on every issue of the city. It is our duty as the elected officials of the city to make these decisions on their behalf. Certainly, we do want to listen to input, and this ordinance was a result of that. We started out with just a couple of words changed in the ordinance. We took all of these actions all along the way to take into consideration those different things. We added them, but the dangerous precedent here is to state that whoever shows up on any given night, if we put two buttons at the front near the microphone and let people weigh in yes or no on every issue, that those around the dais here would be unnecessary. Okay, I wasn't elected. The individual who was elected, whose place I took, Jamie Baird, she actually happened to show up at the last meeting via Zoom, and she stated she would have voted the same way. So that kind of removes that argument that those who were appointed don't have the same authority, which is, first of all, nonsense. But even if that were the case, the individual who was duly elected by the citizens would have made the same decision. So I am disappointed with the wording and for kind of the backhanded comments against the council majority. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilmember Kurtz.
So the one thing that was left out of the ordinance that was really important to me and to the citizens that I heard here, a number of them anyway, was the restriction of access. And I'm the one that voted to not ban books, that whole sentence in there, because it didn't go far enough. It didn't meet the middle ground. The restriction of access was the thing that the public kept talking about over and over, and this council intentionally voted to keep it out of the ordinance. So the middle ground for me would have been having that language in there. And I'm hearing that, you know, I heard Mayor Pro Tem say that he's not against the library. He followed that, a comment from a council member who just said that they were going to take a scalpel to the library and not support anything coming forward. And so I have concerns about that we have an elected official on the record saying that he's not going to support the library moving forward because there was a veto of a legislation that is within the law. And the mayor is the checks and balances of this legislative body. And I know that that's hard for people to take, but we do need to move forward. We do need to move forward on, again, the Liberty Lake Together. I've been told that once the vote's done, you need to move on. And that is what we do need to do. And I do think that there is some repair that's going to need to be made amongst us as the leaders of this community, because leading with threats from the dais is not the way that I think we should be leading here, and it needs to stop. Name calling, we don't call our community a mob either. So if we're going to talk about name calling, we need to be better role models.
Okay, any others? Councilmember Solberg.
Thank you. I don't have any prepared speech that can be replayed later. Nor do I have any criticism of the mayor's veto. As I have said from the beginning that I've heard from the citizens, I disagree with changing the governance of the library. That's the issue that has been in the forefront of almost all of the discussions. The book banning had to do with one particular book, and whether you want to call it pornography and all the rest of the, how many times do we have to kick somebody out of a meeting for exposing all of us to something that we have the right not to see too? I'm sorry, the sides on this are clear to me. It had to do with governance, not about book banning. And this, in my opinion, was the legal way to do the right thing, to listen to the citizens that are here right now, and that were a part of our community, not part of the library or outside of the Liberty Lake community. And it was overwhelming. And if we wanted to in the future, then we could put it to a mailer or to some sort of a poll and see what was really there. And that does not, in my opinion, abdicate our responsibility to legislate for them. When they're not here, that's what we're here to do. I'm also appointed. That's your fault. You guys are the ones that appointed me, not them. But I said that I would represent our community, and that is what I heard. And so the governance of the library needing to be changed from what has been working since the beginning, whether or not we can actually remember the truth of the beginning, is that it was and still is an ordinance that has worked for us for over 20 years. And I'm going to support the mayor's veto.
Okay, any others? All right. And no other comments. I guess we go to a vote. We've got a motion and a second. So how do I phrase this?
It's just the motion was to override the mayor's veto.
Okay, all right. So all in favor of overriding the mayor's veto of ordinance 119C, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
All right, vote is 4-3. Motion fails. I will say, I do think there is a path forward. I hope I would hope to see a smaller group sit down and have level-headed discussions, whether it's one person from each side of this issue and one or two library board members sitting down together collaboratively to come up with something that is palatable to all. There is a path forward. And I'd like to see that work continue to happen. Like Councilmember Spencer said, there are other things in that ordinance that, really do still need to be changed. And and my comments on the book ban part of the wording, point taken about, matching the wording to the policy, but nowhere anywhere does anything actually say book ban. So and a lot of people I spoke to, were still confused about how it was worded, not to mention it started off as being worded in the negative. Council and the mayor will not, instead of neither the council nor the mayor. That just makes things very confusing. And even after a 15-minute phone call with one of the news stations, she called me back 20 minutes later. I still don't get it. The wording was very hard. It was very confusing. I get the intent and support that. For me, it was the wording for that. But again, I would encourage finding the council finding a path forward with the library board to kind of wrap everything up, and so that we've got something that's palatable for everybody in the community, and we can move forward. All right, that being said, we are back up to introduction of upcoming agenda items. We kind of did some of that earlier, follow-up workshop with regards to mission at the 6:20 meeting at 6 p.m. More flock information, discussion on cameras in the HOAs. We'll talk about that some more in tomorrow's directors meeting as well. And that's it for upcoming agenda meetings. Any further citizen comments, either here in chambers or on Zoom? If you're on Zoom, please go ahead and let Todd Henderson know in the chat feature. Oh, looks like we have one here, and make sure you do it before you leave and get it to Kelsey. So just introduce yourself and what.
Hi, I'm Michael Hamblin. I live right here in Liberty Lake. One of the things I wanted to say is I wanted to thank the mayor for vetoing this. And there's only something Sean can do, and that is help you develop constitutionality through design. He can't help you through intent. And when you're encroaching on a constitutional freedom, if you delay in the gatekeeping power you're going to give yourselves, it's quickly disparative. And therefore, it becomes an ordinance that's going to be shot down by intent. So even if it's correct by design, if it's not narrowly tailored, and it was not narrowly tailored, it's assumed to be distributed or disrupting too much of the freedom of speech that we have in this country. And so Sean can't tell you that, but when you're designing something, it's constitutional. But if there's ever a delay in the operation of what you designed, it's seen as being disparative. And then you get strict scrutiny. And under strict scrutiny, that ordinance was not going to stand. And so the right thing to do was to send it back to you so that you could actually sit down and say, how do we narrowly tailor this ordinance if we want it to go forward? That was not narrowly tailored enough to actually get past strict scrutiny. Now, to do that, you actually have to have a rational basis or have a clear, compelling state interest of how we're going to build this and how it's going to be narrowly tailored. So I want to thank the mayor for doing that, because I didn't want to see our area sued down the road if we ever exercised that ordinance. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right. And if there's anybody else here in chambers who'd like to speak, let me know. We do have somebody else online, Corey Chalker. I hope I said that right, Corey. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can now. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay, thanks. I'm actually really annoyed that I was not called on to speak, just like the other ordinances earlier before the vote was made, because I wanted to support our city council. I had something written out to support these people that are Chris and Paul, and you worded it perfectly. Somebody else did too. And I wasn't given a voice. And another man, what was his name? I'm here to watch party. It's not just me. There's a lot of us that agree that we were supporting to veto your veto. And it sounds like everybody's really confused. And how on earth are we voting on something that nobody really knows about? How are you all confused? We need to fix this. We need to fix our city council. The people that voted in our city council to monitor the library were absolutely correct. And now it sounds like you vetoed it without really knowing what you were vetoing. So that's my word. I'm going to work on something to maybe help everybody get their acts together. But this is honestly ridiculous. So congratulations to our city council. I wish you had all voted the right way to veto the mayor's veto, but we're on to you. Thank you.
And I apologize, Corey, if we had missed a hand raise or a message in any of, during any of the open citizen comment periods. All right, do we have anybody else here in chambers? All right, not seeing any. It is 9:55. We do have an executive session, so can I get a motion to extend the meeting to what do we need? 30 minutes?
10:15.
To 10:15.
Make a motion to extend the meeting to 10:15.
All right, do we have a second? Here, Councilmember Dunn. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, any opposed? All right, not hearing any. Motion passes 7-0. We're extended to 10:15, so there will not be any decisions made at executive session. When we come out, we will adjourn. So we are going to go ahead and adjourn to the room next door. Conference room, and we will be back here at 10:15. Hi, everybody. We're back from our executive session and we are adjourning. Everybody have a good night.